Beneath Yellowstone lies a supervolcano capable of reshaping life on Earth. But what makes it truly unsettling is not just its size. It's the possibility that the planet itself is quietly feeding it from below. For years, scientists believed Yellowstone was powered by a deep, steady plume of heat rising from Earth's mantle, like a blowtorch aimed at the crust. But new research published in 2026 paints a much more complex picture. Instead of a single vertical source, Yellowstone appears to sit above a tangled system of underground magma pathways. Imagine a vast, hidden network of channels and reservoirs where molten rock slowly circulates, collects, and shifts. This system is not static. It's constantly being reshaped by tectonic forces, those slow, relentless movements of Earth's crust that stretch, compress, and crack the ground beneath our feet. In this new view, the Earth isn't just hosting the volcano, but actively feeding it. Deep below Yellowstone, movements in the upper mantle and stresses in the crust act like a natural pump, pushing magma into different pockets over time. It's a bit like squeezing a sponge filled with liquid. The pressure forces material to move, sometimes in unexpected directions. This helps explain why Yellowstone is so dynamic, even when it's not erupting. And it has erupted on a staggering scale. Over the past 2.1 million years, Yellowstone has produced 3 super eruptions. The most recent around 630,000 to 640,000 years ago. These were not ordinary volcanic events. They blasted enormous volumes of ash and gas into the atmosphere, reshaping landscapes across continents. If such an eruption were to happen again, it wouldn't come out of nowhere. One of the first warning signs would likely be intense earthquake swarms. Thousands of small quakes as magma forces its way upward. The ground would tremble, shift, and eventually crack under the pressure. The consequences could be global. Ash could spread across vast regions in days, darkening skies and choking agriculture. Sunlight would be partially blocked, cooling the planet and potentially triggering a volcanic winter. Crops could fail, supply chains could falter. The effects would ripple far beyond the eruption zone. And yet, Yellowstone today is not on the verge of exploding. In fact, what scientists see right now is something more subtle and, in a way, more fascinating. Instruments have detected a broad bulge about 19 miles wide rising beneath the park. It's only about an inch of uplift so far, but it reveals magma moving deep underground. This kind of motion is not unusual for Yellowstone. It's part of its natural rhythm. Despite its dramatic past and immense power, the chances of a super eruption in our lifetime are extremely low. The magma chamber is mostly solid and current activity remains within normal limits. Still, Yellowstone is very much alive, so it's yet to see what the future holds. New Zealand's most active and dangerous volcano is erupting again, reminding everyone of its power. This time, ash from the White Island volcano has drifted across flight paths, sparking concern and forcing airports to cancel flights. Locals know all too well that this volcano should never be underestimated. The current eruption comes just a few years after a catastrophic explosion claimed the lives of tourists and guides who were on the island. But against all odds, some people managed to survive what could have been their tragic end. It was December 9th, 2019. The sky was clear and blue over the Bay of Plenty, a big bay on the northern coast of New Zealand's North Island. It felt like the perfect day for sightseeing. The main attraction in the area is the White Island volcano, also known as Whakaari. It is huge, with its peak rising about 1,000 feet above sea level. Its impressive size and stunning views have been drawing visitors from all over the world for years. Actually, we're talking about very brave visitors, as being near an active volcano comes with serious dangers, such as explosive eruptions, fatal emissions of sulfur dioxide, superheated steam, earthquakes, rockfalls, and even tsunamis. Experts normally say that these catastrophic events are extremely rare, which is true, but rare doesn't mean impossible. On that doomed day, 47 people were having the best time exploring the island. Little did they know that everything was about to change at exactly 2:11 that afternoon when the volcano erupted. A fisherman who was out at sea near the volcano described it as a huge explosion going off, forming a mushroom cloud as it expanded. Photos taken from a distance and satellite images show that a thick white cloud filled the sky a couple of moments after the eruption. Authorities then issued an alert about a moderate volcanic eruption, warning people living near the volcano to stay inside and close their windows and doors to prevent ash from coming in. But the authorities' nightmare truly began when they checked cameras on the island and saw what appeared to be people going inside the crater just 1 minute before the eruption. Right at that moment, they knew they had to launch an urgent rescue operation. Time was running out, and every second counted. The people were in serious danger. 7 rescue helicopters were sent to the scene with paramedics on board. They managed to find the first survivors, and 7 of them were seriously hurt. At around 5 in the morning the next day, officials announced that 23 people had been rescued from the island. They knew more people were still trapped there, but rescue teams could not communicate with any of them. And there was something even more worrying in the back of their minds: the risk and fear that a second eruption might happen at any moment. Recovery efforts during that week were really challenging due to ongoing seismic and volcanic activity. Heavy rain, low visibility, and toxic gases made things even tougher for the teams on the ground. Unfortunately, 22 people lost their lives in this tragedy, either due to the explosion or from their injuries. Those who survived tell heroic stories about that day. One of the survivors was from Sydney and was only 19 years old when he went on a family trip to New Zealand. The itinerary included a visit to the famous White Island volcano. He said that his tour group, including his family members, was caught in a relatively flat and open area on their walk down from the crater when the volcano erupted. Then he was thrown over a mound by the force of the eruption before curling up in the fetal position, covering his head with his hands. He felt like he was being hammered by a sandstorm, like in movies where characters can't see a few feet in front of them. Once the eruption clouds lifted, the island returned to the clear day it had been before, except everything was covered in gray ash. That was when he saw his father struggling to breathe. He remembers spending about 20 minutes thinking about what he could do, even though he was feeling unbearable pain. With hope of survival, he gathered all his strength to get up and seek help. Eventually, he managed to reach the pier where he was rescued and taken to a hospital. He spent 8 days in intensive care and, like a hero, managed to survive. Unfortunately, he never saw his family again. Along with other survivors, this young man was one of those who sought justice after the incident. According to him, he wasn't given any indication of dangers before going on the trip, and only had a short safety briefing that day with no emergency plans in place. This brings us to an important question regarding this tragedy. How could no one have predicted what was going to happen? Were they all really caught by surprise? To answer these questions, we need to understand a bit about the nature of volcanoes and how they behave. So, New Zealand is situated on 2 tectonic plates. These plates are always moving very slowly, and what happens there, specifically, is that the Pacific plate slides under the Indo-Australian plate. The problem is that when this subduction or sliding process happens, it can create deep trenches. As the edge of the denser plate moves down, the pressure and temperature around it go up. This causes changes in the plate that melt the rock above it, and that melted rock can rise and come through a volcano. This geological process has helped shape the beauty of New Zealand with its rugged terrain and stunning mountain landscape, but it can also be destructive. There are several active volcanoes in the country, and White Island is just one of them. Eruptions like the one that happened in 2019 have been occurring for tens of millions of years. White Island volcano is a stratovolcano, which means it has that classic cone shape like Stromboli in the Mediterranean or Mount St. Helens in Washington. It's also part of the Ring of Fire, a region filled with volcanoes that surrounds the Pacific Ocean. What makes this area so dangerous is the molten rock or magma hiding underneath these volcanoes. This magma is usually thick and filled with gas, which can lead to powerful and explosive eruptions. According to specialists, the eruption on White Island was likely a steam eruption. Stratovolcanoes often have many cracks that let water in. When this water meets hot magma, it turns into superheated steam that usually escapes through vents. If these vents get blocked, pressure builds up, which can lead to an explosive eruption that blasts steam, hot ash, and rock into the air. The thing with steam eruptions is that they're considered relatively small eruptions, but still fatal if you get too close. And it's precisely because they're small that they become very hard to predict. They can strike without warning, catching everyone off guard and turning a seemingly calm day into a life-threatening situation in an instant. So, about that day in 2019. Yep, the volcano really surprised the tourists and their guides, but we need to clarify one thing. About a month earlier, experts did notice an increase in toxic sulfur dioxide coming from the volcano. They raised the danger alert to level 2, which stands for moderate to heightened volcanic unrest. But what happened was that, back then, it was still pretty common for tour operators to keep running their tours, even with a level 2 alert. Unfortunately, the country learned the hard way that volcano tourism can be really dangerous, and White Island has been off limits since then. I mean, you can't get too close anymore, going there by boat or helicopter. But for those with a taste for adventure, scenic flights are still an option, allowing you to catch a glimpse of the volcano from a safe distance.
These ominous rumbling sounds, the ground shaking under your feet. Wait a minute, that's my tummy. Or it might be Washington State's Mount Adams waking up. It's the largest volcano in the state by both area and volume, and it's recently started to show signs of life after staying silent for thousands of years. Scientists have noticed an alarming uptick in seismic activity around the mountain. And since the last eruption here happened between 3,800 and 7,600 years ago, humanity was still in the Stone Age at that time. This sudden chattiness has scientists, let's say, curious. The U.S. Geological Survey has hurriedly installed temporary seismic stations around Mount Adams to keep an eye on the situation. At the same time, they reassure the public there's no need to panic. Mount Adams doesn't reach the height of the better-known Mount Rainier, and still it covers a massive area, making it Washington's largest active volcano. Interestingly, records show that before September of this year, Mount Adams had experienced an average of just one small earthquake every 2 to 3 years since 1982. And then, the Cascades Volcano Observatory and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network detected a staggering 6 earthquakes in just 1 month, September. These quakes were all rather tiny, with magnitudes ranging between 0.9 and 2 on the Richter scale. It means they were so weak you wouldn't feel them at the surface. Plus, satellite imagery confirmed there was no ground deformation in the area. Now, at the moment, the USGS keeps Mount Adams alert level at green or normal, so we shouldn't worry about the ground opening and swallowing towns and cities. But the most recent seismic blips have encouraged the agency to install additional equipment for more precise monitoring. Such an expanded network will help scientists notice even the smallest earthquakes, which will help them understand what's happening under Mount Adams. This extra equipment might also shed light on whether this recent activity is a signal of future eruptions or just a random anomaly. If Mount Adams eventually erupted, it would likely produce slow-moving lava flows rather than explosive eruptions like Mount St. Helens. After all, past eruptions have only led to lava flows that travel just a few miles from the volcano, so that's not what we'd need to worry about. A much more dangerous thing would be lahars. These are mud flows that can happen when volcanic ash, rock, and melted ice mix during eruptions. Lahars have occurred near Mount Adams without even eruptions. Rock, weakened by hydrothermal processes at the volcano's summit, suddenly broke loose, creating fast-moving, destructive mud flows. Exactly for this reason, the USGS categorizes Mount Adams as a high-threat volcano. While it doesn't erupt frequently, it still poses serious risks to nearby settlements. Another volcano we should carefully watch is Katla in Iceland. It's one of the country's most powerful and dangerous volcanoes. It last erupted over a century ago in 1918, but if it erupts again, it could be 10 times as powerful as another Icelandic volcano whose name I can't pronounce. See? That one erupted in 2010, completely disrupting air travel all over Europe. An eruption of Katla could release large amounts of sulfur dioxide, which could form sulfate aerosols in the atmosphere. Such aerosols reflect sunlight, which could even cause temporary global cooling. This phenomenon often followed catastrophic volcanic eruptions in the past. Although eruptions are common in Iceland, Katla's ash cloud would likely shoot higher into the sky and cover larger areas of Europe than that other one did. It would ground flights and negatively affect economies. If Katla erupted, it would also harm agriculture, water supplies, and air quality. In 2014, scientists noted that a large eruption could even cause a tsunami that might travel along Iceland's south coast and out to sea. But the potential impact of such a tsunami is still unclear. Katla tends to erupt on a regular schedule every 40 to 80 years, which means that another eruption is statistically very likely soon. That's why Katla remains under close scientific observation. The Canary Islands' Cumbra Vieja erupted recently in 2021, reminding people of its destructive potential. The lava flow from this eruption was devastating. It covered whole neighborhoods and flowed into the ocean, destroying more than 3,000 homes. Thousands of people had to be evacuated. But the craziest thing? Even though the damage was significant, scientists believe it could have been far worse. A massive eruption of Cumbra Vieja could have caused the volcano's entire western flank to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean, triggering a mega tsunami. This hypothetical tsunami could have potentially created waves hundreds or even thousands of feet high. They could have flooded coastlines around the Atlantic Basin, including parts of the US and Europe. Luckily, recent studies claim that a collapse of that scale is unlikely. But even though the chance of a mega tsunami is low, scientists still think it's wise to prepare for possible eruptions because there's a chance of extensive damage. The lava flows that occur at this volcano tend to be extensive and dangerous to both human life and the infrastructure on the island. If you decide to travel to Ecuador, you should be wary of Cotopaxi, one of the most active volcanoes in this country. It's been rumbling with minor eruptions since 2022. While these eruptions have been relatively small, Cotopaxi has a great potential for a major eruption, and it has scientists on high alert. If Cotopaxi erupted on a large scale, it could produce a massive ash cloud over 12 miles high, threatening the lives of around 200,000 people in the neighboring area. A serious danger is Cotopaxi's snow-capped summit. It would melt super rapidly in a major eruption. It could lead to destructive floods and landslides that would flow down the mountain and potentially reach populated areas. This combination of volcanic activity and glacial floods makes Cotopaxi a high-risk volcano. A powerful eruption could occur soon, or it could be years or even decades away. But monitoring efforts are in place to catch any warning signs. The next volcano we should watch out for is already infamous, Mount Vesuvius. Its catastrophic eruption in 79 CE destroyed the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. Its last eruption occurred in 1944, but Vesuvius remains highly active and poses a great risk to nearby Naples, one of Italy's largest cities. A large eruption would threaten over 3 million people. Many of them live in the vicinity or even directly on the slopes of the volcano. If Vesuvius erupted, it would be an explosive event, with ash, rocks, and volcanic gas ejected at extremely high speeds. And even though such a destructive event isn't expected for a few hundred years, Vesuvius remains one of the world's most closely watched volcanoes. After all, it has a real potential to cause catastrophic damage in a densely populated area. Then we have Popocatépetl, often called El Popo. It's one of North America's tallest active volcanoes, which lies about 40 miles from Mexico City. Exactly this proximity to a metropolitan area with a population of 22 million people makes Popocatépetl especially hazardous. A large eruption could send a massive ash cloud over Mexico City, causing widespread disruptions. Ash could clog the city's drainage systems, contaminate water supplies, and even cause power outages by short-circuiting electrical systems. Plus, lahars could rush down the volcano, reaching nearby towns. Popocatépetl has been showing near-constant seismic activity since the early 2000s, and smaller eruptions are pretty common here. In early 2024, there were 13 recorded minor eruptions, which alarmed nearby towns. At the same time, volcanologists consider such eruptions normal for Popocatépetl. While talking about super dangerous volcanoes, we can't skip Yellowstone National Park. It houses one of the world's largest supervolcanoes. Its last massive eruption occurred about 640,000 years ago. But if this monster were to erupt today, the impact would be much more devastating for the entire planet. States closest to Yellowstone, including Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming, would be most affected, likely experiencing disastrous pyroclastic flows. These flows, which are made of a dangerous mix of lava, ash, and gases, can obliterate everything in their path. Large parts of the country would also be blanketed in volcanic ash, over 3 feet in some areas. On a global scale, an eruption at Yellowstone would send tons of ash and gases into the stratosphere, potentially blocking sunlight and causing global temperatures to drop for a few years. This would disrupt agriculture, collapse transportation systems, and create food shortages on a massive scale. Still, even though there's a popular myth that Yellowstone is overdue for an eruption, geologists clarify that this isn't true. Volcanoes don't follow precise timetables, and the activity at Yellowstone doesn't indicate an imminent eruption. So yeah, that's good news.
Mount St. Helens is exploding. A massive earthquake is ripping through the area, and a side of the volcano is giving way, crashing down in a deafening landslide. A towering wall of rock, ash, and debris is roaring down the valley, flattening everything in its path. Then comes the blast, a sideways explosion of superheated gas and volcanic debris. Trees are snapping like matchsticks. Homes are vanishing under an ash cloud so thick it blots out the sun. Ashfall rains down on towns hundreds of miles away. People are scrambling for masks and fleeing roads blocked by mud flows called lahars, toxic rivers of volcanic mud. The air fills with dust. Emergency sirens scream. Airports shut down. Hospitals fill with people struggling to breathe. The sky glows eerie orange as lightning storms ignite within the ash cloud overhead. This nightmarish scenario might play out very soon. Mount St. Helens, the famous volcano that blew its top in 1980, is acting a bit restless lately. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, about 350 earthquakes occurred from February to June 2024, and 12 more from September 2024 to January 2025. It was like a bunch of tiny tremors throwing a party underground. Most were so tiny you wouldn't even feel them. But on May 31st, 2024, there was one that hit magnitude 2.0. It's just strong enough that if you were nearby, you might have felt a little rumble. Don't freak out yet though. Over 95% of those quakes were super small with a magnitude less than 1.0. Scientists say this is the biggest burst of shaking since the volcano last erupted in 2008. But the volcano has already done this before. In the late 80s and 90s, it didn't blow up, so more earthquakes didn't mean an eruption is guaranteed. What's really going on might be something called a recharge, which is like the volcano's version of refueling. Magma, the hot melted rock, slowly climbs up from deep underground and fills a big underground magma chamber about 2.5 to 6 miles down. When magma fills this tank, it can cause a lot of stress underground, which makes the ground shake. Right now, there's no other sign that the volcano is about to blow. No weird ground bulges, no extra gas leaks, no heat spikes. The USGS says this level of shaking can go on for years without anything major happening. The alert level is still at normal. But it was very different back on May 18, 1980. Mount St. Helens unleashed one of the most explosive volcanic eruptions in history. And it all started with a huge earthquake, bigger than magnitude 5. But this wasn't just any earthquake. It triggered a massive landslide that ripped off the top of the volcano and tore away the rock and ice that had been holding everything down like a giant lid. Suddenly, the pressure that had been trapping superheated water underground vanished. That water instantly turned to steam, and boom! It burst sideways in a powerful hydrothermal blast. And that was only the beginning. With the top gone, the magma beneath the surface suddenly felt free. It started rising faster, forming bubbles and erupting with terrifying force. For 9 straight hours, Mount St. Helens was sending ash and gas miles into the sky. This giant blast didn't come out of nowhere. The warning signs started months before. On March 16, 1980, tiny earthquakes shook the volcano for the first time in years. By March 27, after hundreds of quakes, Mount St. Helens had its first little steam eruption in over a century. It threw ash and rock into the air and blasted a crater in the icy summit. The volcano kept getting angrier. That crater grew fast and cracks spread across the summit. At the same time, eruptions went from one every hour in March to one every day by April. Then things quieted down for a while. Few people realized that the danger was just beneath the surface. By May, over 10,000 earthquakes had rattled the mountain. The north side of the volcano swelled outward, growing about 450 feet. It was a bulge so huge that it looked like the mountain was about to explode. Scientists knew that magma was pushing up inside, creating a hidden cryptodome, a giant underground pocket of molten rock. And then it blew, shattering the mountain and changing the landscape. On May 18, 1980, exactly at 8:32 a.m., a magnitude 5.1 earthquake hit Mount St. Helens. Without any obvious warning signs, the entire north side of the volcano, the part that had been bulging out for weeks, suddenly broke loose and slid away in a massive landslide. This wasn't just any landslide, it was the largest debris avalanche ever recorded on Earth. Imagine a giant mass of rock, dirt, and trees rushing downhill. It was like dumping 1 million Olympic swimming pools full of stuff into the valley. When the cryptodome got ripped away, the pressure inside the volcano dropped incredibly fast, and this sudden pressure release triggered a huge sideways explosion that tore through the landslide debris. This lateral blast was insanely fast, over 300 miles per hour, and it ripped through everything in its path. Trees were uprooted, forests flattened, and a giant cloud of ash and hot rock shot straight up into the sky. In just 15 minutes, that eruption cloud soared more than 80,000 feet high, way higher than an altitude of 35,000 feet, at which commercial airplanes fly. The blast destroyed an area nearly 19 miles wide from west to east and stretched over 12 miles to the north. In the zone closest to the volcano, almost no trees were left standing. At the blast's far edge, the remaining trees were scorched and burned. A huge area, about 230 square miles, was covered by a thick blanket of hot debris. That sudden release of pressure also affected the volcano's plumbing system, all the way to the underground magma chamber. With less pressure holding it back, the superhot magma suddenly expanded and rushed upward toward the surface. Starting just after noon, fast-moving pyroclastic flows, superhot clouds of gas, ash, and debris, raced out of the crater at speeds between 50 and 80 miles per hour. Those flows formed what we now know as the pumice plain. Scientists say the eruption hit its most powerful stage between 3 and 5 p.m. When the violent phase finally ended, the summit revealed a brand new giant crater shaped like an amphitheater. All day long, the winds carried over 540 million tons of volcanic ash east across the United States. The ash was so thick it caused total darkness in Spokane, Washington, about 250 miles away. Ash also fell as far as central Montana and could even be spotted hundreds of miles farther east, all the way to the Great Plains, which is over 900 miles from the volcano. The massive ash cloud spread across the entire US in just 3 days and then circled the entire planet in just 15 days. But there was one more problem. The hot gas and rocks were so wild and fast that they melted and ripped up a lot of the snow and ice sitting on top of Mount St. Helens. That sudden rush of melted ice and water mixed with loose dirt and rock, creating fast-moving, dangerous mud flows called lahars. Those lahars tore down the mountain into the river valleys, and the biggest, nastiest lahar hit the North Fork Toutle River. As this muddy, powerful flood barreled downstream, it picked up more dirt and debris, growing bigger and stronger. It smashed through bridges, crushed homes, and finally slammed into the Cowlitz River, reaching its peak size around midnight, about 50 miles away from the volcano. The whole natural disaster took the lives of more than 50 people. After the eruption, the mountain looked like a wasteland, and scientists wanted to see how life could start fresh in such a harsh place. So, their unusual plan was to release a few gophers to dig around the barren soil. Those busy burrowers churned up ash and volcanic debris, digging deep enough to bring buried bacteria and fungi back to the surface. Tiny microbes, especially mycorrhizal fungi, are crucial because they help plants get water and nutrients. It's like hooking roots up to a nutrient highway. Within 6 years, places where gophers worked got covered with over 40,000 plants. At the same time, nearby untouched areas stayed mostly lifeless. The fungi helped plants grow in the soil that was otherwise nutrient-poor and lifeless. Even old-growth forests buried under ash bounced back quickly, thanks to their own fungal networks. But where forests had been clear-cut before the eruption, no such comeback happened. No trees, no fungi, just burned soil even decades later. This area might just be the most important spot in America right now, as it is worth over $1 trillion. There's something incredibly valuable hidden right here at Thacker Pass, and it is going to shake things up, not just in Nevada, but in the US economy and its global relations. The McDermott Caldera is a massive area, about 28 miles long by 22 miles wide, stretching across northern Nevada and southern Oregon. It's in Humboldt County, a quiet, rural place with just one main city that's going to change a lot in the next 5 to 10 years. That's because they found white gold there. We're talking about lithium. And to explain why this metal is so important, we need a scale. On one side, we place a chunk of lithium, and on the other, an apple. What do you think will happen? If both have the same volume, the scale is going to tip toward the apple. That's because lithium is super light. Its density is about 0.3 ounces per cubic inch, which makes it the lightest solid you can find at room temperature. Lithium is also extremely reactive. That means it combines with other elements very easily, and it can catch fire just as easily. Mix it with water, fire. Expose it to air, yep, fire again. But when you combine its lightness with its high reactivity, you get a material that's perfect for batteries. Like the one powering your smartphone, laptop, or even your electric car. Nevada's been hiding this treasure for about 16 million years. The McDermott caldera used to be a volcanic hotspot, spewing molten rock and creating a huge lake filled with mineral-rich waters. Over time, that lake dried up, leaving behind thick layers of clay loaded with lithium. Right now, Thacker Pass Mine is sitting on one of the biggest untapped lithium reserves in the world, worth about $1.5 trillion. If everything goes as planned, they expect it to produce about 40,000 tons of high-quality lithium a year. And that's enough to make batteries for up to 800,000 electric cars. Like I mentioned earlier, this metal is the backbone of modern batteries. And with the world racing toward green energy, the demand for lithium is skyrocketing. Since 2020, its price has gone up more than 10 times, making it the most expensive battery metal in the world. That means it's way more expensive than magnesium, nickel, cobalt, and other materials used in rechargeable batteries. Right now, we're using about 1.16 million tons of lithium per year, and roughly 85% of it goes into making batteries, mostly for cars. Between 2030 and 2040, experts think we will need to double the money we're putting into production, from $94 billion to $188 billion. At the same time, investment in batteries will jump by over 200%, reaching $686 billion. Finally, by 2050, the demand for lithium is expected to be more than 10 times higher than what we're producing now. Sorry, I know that's a lot of numbers, but I just want to show how important Thacker Pass will be for the whole world. This mine is going to be key to keeping everything running. I mean, literally, since most of the future demand will be for things like cars, electric bikes, scooters, and renewable energy storage. Nevada could also be the epicenter of a global energy revolution, with the US aiming to cut pollution by 50% by 2030. A big part of that is replacing gas-powered vehicles with electric ones. And to make that happen, America is going to need a whole lot more lithium than it's producing right now. Nowadays, most of the metal used in the United States come from countries like Chile and Argentina. So if America wants to be a leader in this market, it really needs to invest more and more in projects like Thacker Pass. But there's another challenge. Finding lithium in a mine is one thing, but refining it is another story. Just like diamonds are carefully cut and shaped to bring out their sparkle and sold in rings and necklaces, something similar needs to be done with lithium. The raw material that comes from the mines has to be refined into a pure form that can actually be used in things like batteries. And China pretty much dominates this part of the market, and they're responsible for about 75% of global lithium-ion battery production. In other words, it doesn't matter if a country finds this powerful metal on its land. It will probably still need China to help refine it. So, the US is eager to strengthen its supply chain. In fact, they're so excited about this possibility that authorities have invested over $2 billion in loans into the Nevada project. Because of that, Thacker Pass could make the US a leader in lithium production worldwide. If their estimates are right, the McDermott caldera could hold nearly half of the world's known lithium reserves. It would almost double the reserves found in Bolivia's salt flats, for example, which used to hold the record for the world's largest deposit. This discovery is about to change Humboldt County for good. Those quiet streets surrounded by nature will never feel the same again. The mine will need about 2,000 workers, who will probably move there from other cities. Those workers will need houses, hospitals, schools for their kids, and all the necessary services. Do you see how it's like a ripple effect? For every person hired to work on the project during construction, 6 more people will get hired in the state to support them. Thacker Pass is also going to have a huge impact on the economy, not just in Nevada, but all across the country. People expect the mine to be active for 35 years, and each year it's expected to generate over $2 billion. But here's the thing. In Thacker Pass, they'll be extracting lithium from clay, and this process has never been done on such a huge scale before. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But if it works, it could completely change the industry. Big question. Who's interested in all this? Well, we've got 3 big companies eyeing the lithium market in the US. First, there's ExxonMobil. The oil giant wants to start producing lithium by 2027, and they have plans to become the top supplier for electric vehicles by 2030. Then there's General Motors, the company behind big car brands like Chevrolet and Cadillac. They're so interested in this business that they agreed to pay $625 million for a 38% stake in Thacker Pass. And finally, Tesla. In 2023, they started building a factory in Texas to process lithium. It's all part of their plan to handle more of their supply chain themselves. Now that you know how important lithium is, you might be wondering, what if we run out? Well, that could happen, since it comes from mining and, just like gold, is a finite resource. But that doesn't mean we'd have to give up smartphones or electric cars. If we ever run out of this metal, we'd probably find new ways to produce batteries. In fact, some experts think thermal batteries could be the next big thing. They store extra energy from renewable resources like wind or solar power, which are very cheap. So they represent a new way of storing energy at a small fraction of the cost. Nowadays, they're primarily used for powering the production of steel, cement, and chemicals. Thermal batteries are also being used to heat and cool large buildings. However, more and more projects are focusing on bringing this technology into private spaces, like houses and apartments. Experts are optimistic that initiatives like these could make thermal batteries as well known as electric batteries, and they might soon become a regular part of our daily lives.
There's an old volcano in Bolivia called Uturuncu. It hasn't erupted in about 250,000 years, so you may think that's the end of its story. But recently, it has started to act a little strangely. At the moment, it resembles a zombie that's waking up from a long nap. Uh-oh, is that kind of apocalypse nearing? Uturuncu is a huge mountain in the Andes that's almost 20,000 feet tall. It's called a stratovolcano, which means it's big, steep, and cone-shaped. These kinds of volcanoes are made from layers of lava, ash, and rocks. They can have terrifying, powerful, explosive eruptions because their lava is thick and traps gas inside. Think of it like a shaken-up soda that's ready to burst. Famous ones like Mount Vesuvius are just like Uturuncu. And do you remember about the tragic fate of Pompeii, completely destroyed during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius? Does something similar await Bolivia? Even though Uturuncu has been quiet for a long time, scientists have noticed that it's been letting out gas, rumbling with small earthquakes, and even making the ground around it bulge, kind of like it's stretching. So, people started wondering if it was getting ready to erupt again. Scientists decided to take a closer look at this situation and found out that liquid and gas moving around under the volcano is causing all this activity. It doesn't mean the volcano is definitely going to erupt, but it helps explain why it still seems alive. Let's dive into details. Since the 1990s, scientists have been using satellites and GPS to keep an eye on the ground around the Uturuncu volcano. At one point, they noticed something weird. The ground was rising in the middle and sinking around the edges, kind of like a sombrero hat. The middle part has been slowly going up for at least 50 years by about 0.4 inches a year, It doesn't sound like a lot, but hold on. This strange shape, along with lots of tiny earthquakes and gas like carbon dioxide coming out of the volcano, made scientists think that there might be a giant blob of magma growing under the mountain. If that were true, it could mean only one scary thing. The volcano could be getting ready to erupt. Uturunco sits on top of a huge underground pool of magma called the Altiplano Puna magma body. This pool is really big and really deep, stretching under parts of Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. Scientists thought that magma from the APMB might be rising and collecting near the surface, which could lead to an eruption. But now, after studying more than 1,700 earthquakes and checking the rocks around the volcano, scientists have a new idea. Apparently, it's not magma rising up. Instead, hot fluids and gases are traveling up from the APMB through a narrow path shaped like a chimney. These gases, like steam and CO2, can get trapped under the top of the volcano, while salty water, brine, spreads out sideways into tiny cracks in the rocks. This moving gas and water can make the ground rise and fall and cause small quakes, without any magma getting close to the surface. So the good news is, Uturuncu probably isn't about to erupt. If it did happen, it would cause serious damage to nearby communities and even pose a threat to human lives. Lava flows could reach towns tens of miles away from the volcano, and volcanic ash could even spread across Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. Luckily, even though the volcano is still alive and rumbling, it's not as dangerous as scientists once thought. This discovery might help scientists figure out if other volcanoes around the world are getting ready to erupt. Now, let's visit Alaska, where according to researchers, Mount Spur might erupt soon. It's letting out strange amounts of volcanic gases from the top and side vent, the very vent that last erupted in 1992. If it erupts again, it could cause problems for airplanes flying nearby and might send ash falling from the sky. The good news is that nobody lives close to it, so people are safe for now. But even though Mount Spur isn't super dangerous, there are other volcanoes around the world that could be really destructive. One of those is Campi Flegrei, a giant volcano system near the city of Naples. Instead of one big mountain, it has 24 craters spread across the area. It last erupted in 1538, but its biggest eruption happened about 40,000 years ago. That explosion covered the whole Mediterranean region in ash and made temperatures drop by up to 16.2 degrees Fahrenheit in Eastern Europe, which led to a very cold volcanic winter. If Campi Flegrei erupted again today, it could be very dangerous. It might cover Naples and nearby places in ash, causing earthquakes and landslides, and create air pollution and acid rain. Scientists are keeping an eye on it, especially after a 4.4 magnitude earthquake shook the area in March 2025. But the good news is, there's no sign that magma is rising to the surface right now, which means an eruption isn't expected soon. Still, since Italy has a lot of volcanic activity, experts continue to watch it carefully. Mount Vesuvius is also in Italy and is one of the most famous volcanoes in the world. It's known for its huge eruption in 79 CE that buried the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. The last time the volcano erupted was in 1944. Today, Vesuvius is even more dangerous because over 3 million people live near it. Around 700,000 people are living illegally right on its slopes, which puts them even more at risk. If the volcano erupts again, it could send rocks and ash flying through the air at nearly 100 miles per hour and cause major destruction, possibly even wiping out Naples. And still, scientists believe a big eruption from Vesuvius probably won't happen for a few hundred more years. But since it's still an active volcano, researchers continue to monitor it. Cumbre Vieja is a volcano on the island of La Palma, which is part of the Canary Islands. It last erupted in 2021. During that eruption, lava poured out of the volcano and flowed all the way to the sea. It destroyed over 3,000 homes, but luckily, thousands of people were safely evacuated, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been. In the past, scientists were worried that a huge eruption could cause the entire western side of the volcano to break off and crash into the ocean. This could create a mega tsunami, sending massive waves hundreds of feet high across the Atlantic Ocean. But more recent studies have shown that this is very unlikely to happen. Mount St. Helens is a volcano in Washington state in the United States. It had a massive eruption in May 1980 that ended the lives of 57 people. That eruption also caused the biggest landslide ever recorded. Hot, pressurized magma exploded from the volcano, shooting ash 15 miles into the sky. Ash covered a huge area, and around 230 square miles of land was destroyed. Mount St. Helens is still active and is expected to erupt again someday, possibly even in our lifetimes. But experts say it's not likely to have another huge sideways blast like the one in 1980, thanks to a deep crater that is now formed at the top. It will change the way the volcano might erupt. Popocatépetl is a big, active volcano in Mexico. It's been slowly erupting on and off since the early 2000s. It's really close to a lot of people, just 40 miles from the Mexico City metropolitan area, which has about 22 million people, and 30 miles from Puebla, which is home to about 6 million inhabitants. If Popocatépetl had a huge eruption, it could cover Mexico City in thick ash as much as 8 inches deep. That ash could block drains, mess up the water, and even stop the electricity from working. Even worse, fast-moving lava and super hot flows, called pyroclastic flows, could rush down the mountain and destroy towns nearby. The volcano was quiet for 50 years, but now it rumbles and shakes pretty often. There have been over a dozen small eruptions, including some as recent as February 2024. Some nearby places got covered in ash, but scientists say this isn't too surprising, and they're keeping a close eye on it. The floor is lava! Haha, just kidding. But honestly, it's kind of falling apart. You might not feel it yet, but a huge part of North America has already lost 37 miles worth of rock from its foundation. And no, this isn't about earthquakes or giant sinkholes. It's about the continent losing pieces of the very thing that keeps the ground from wobbling around like a bad carnival ride. A team of researchers has just dropped a geological bombshell. Part of North America's ground is thinning out like a very sad, very slow ice cream drip. How do they know? They basically gave Earth a high-tech full-body MRI and created 3D maps showing how rocks once considered indestructible are now melting away into the planet's guts, like an upside-down cheese pizza inside an oven. But to really understand this mess, you first have to meet my old friends, cratons. Cratons are like the roots of the continents. They're thick, tough, and ancient. We're talking billions of years old. These bad boys survived meteor impacts, supervolcanoes, and even the tectonic movement of plates. If the plates got into fistfights, for example, you can bet we would see mountain ranges being born. If they got a divorce, drifting apart from each other, then a whole new ocean would be born. All of these things leave scars on the surface of Earth, but the cratons seem to always remain unfazed, like the cockroaches of geology. And since a craton can basically get punched in the face and feel nothing, scientists always assumed these things were nearly indestructible. But then, a group of researchers took their fancy machines to the test and realized that, wait, The cratons are falling apart? How? Enter the Farallon Plate, a really ancient tectonic plate that started to slide under North America's major plate over 100 million years ago. This is a pretty normal process, actually. It's called subduction, and it's how Earth recycles rocks and keeps itself from overheating. This subduction thing has been happening for so long that, by now, the Farallon is almost 400 miles away from the craton, sitting pretty chill at the lower mantle, weirdly close to the outer core of our planet. But the Farallon has been causing trouble, like that one roommate who moved out but keeps leaving weird stuff in the fridge. You see, as it sinks, it tugs on the bottom of North America's foundation, stretching it out and causing pieces to fall off into the deep mantle. And if that wasn't enough drama, the sinking Farallon has also leaked water and carbon dioxide into the surrounding rocks, making the craton even softer and easier to shred apart. Thanks, Farallon. Very cool of you. By studying hundreds of earthquakes across thousands of monitoring stations, scientists have confirmed the story. Big chunks of continental material are dripping downward, thinning the craton by as much as 37 miles. That's more missing rocks than can fit into a milk carton. Sounds dramatic, right? But don't worry. This is happening at a snail's pace. It'll take millions of years for anything noticeable to happen. Your great-great-great-great few grandkids from the distant future might still be standing on solid ground. But don't get too comfy. This thing may not be an urgent problem, but there's another type of sinking that's happening faster than you can say, "Help." Here's the thing. By 2050, at least 32 major cities in the US, including New York, Baltimore, and Charleston, could be partially underwater. And guess what? This one is mostly our fault. Scientists noticed that since 2007, some cities have been sinking into the ground between 0.04 and 0.08 inches every year. Charleston, in South Carolina, is pulling ahead in the worst way possible, sinking 0.15 inches annually. Sure, these numbers sound tiny and a bit ridiculous, but Charleston is barely 9 feet above sea level, and a little sinking goes a long way when the ocean is breathing down your neck. On really bad flood days, people there have to abandon their cars and basically swim home. This whole phenomenon is called land subsidence, and when you mix sinking land with rising sea levels, you get a disaster cocktail of flooded streets, salty farmland, ghost forests, and a lot of very cranky homeowners. And it doesn't stop with just homes. Infrastructure like bridges, roads, airports, and power plants, all things we rely on daily, are also at risk of serious damage. Flooded electrical grids and sunken highways could cause billions more in economic losses and create major safety hazards for communities. Now, let's be fair. Not everything is humanity's fault. Some of this trouble dates all the way back to the Ice Age. About 12,000 years ago, massive ice sheets covered the northern US. They were heavy, like seriously heavy. The weight pushed the land down, and when the ice melted, the ground didn't just pop back up like a trampoline. Instead, it started playing a weird game of geological seesaw. The places that were squished started rising, and the places that weren't got pulled down. This whole process, called glacial isostatic adjustment, try to say that 3 times fast. But of course, humans found a way to make it worse. Groundwater extraction is a major culprit. Think of it like pulling the stuff out of the mattress. After a while, the whole thing just sags. In places like California's Central Valley, the land is dropping by up to 8 inches a year because we keep pumping out water during droughts. In cities like New York, the problem isn't just water. Skyscrapers themselves are making it worse. Yep, turns out if you stack millions of tons of concrete and steel onto soft ground, it tends to flatten. And in case you're wondering, the total mass of New York City's buildings is around 1.68 trillion pounds. That's about the same as 3.5 million statues of liberty piled up. With so much weight concentrated over a relatively small area, the underlying soils have no choice but to compress over time. And if you thought it couldn't get messier, think again. We've been building dams, which stop rivers from delivering fresh sediment to coastal areas. That sediment is kind of like Mother Nature's way of fluffing the ground back up. Without it, coastal lands are compacting like an old sponge. Plus, when wetlands are drained for agriculture or construction, the peaty soil dries out and collapses. Honestly, it's like the ground just can't catch a break. Scientists also noticed that the areas that used to be lush wetlands are now among the fastest sinking spots in the country, especially along the Gulf Coast. Louisiana, for example, is losing about a football field of land because of this mix of subsidence and rising seas. So what's the endgame here for us regular people who just want to live above sea level? Well, it's not looking great. Ghost forests, which are basically drowned woodlands, are popping up. Farmland is turning salty and unusable. And even sunny day flooding, where streets flood without any rain, is becoming a thing. Yikes! Meanwhile, over on the West Coast, California is not exactly winning either. San Francisco and Los Angeles are both sinking, which means that rising sea levels could hit them twice as hard and twice as fast. In some places like the Palos Verdes Peninsula, the ground has been sinking so fast, people over there might as well live like moles. So, is America turning into the next Atlantis? Probably not next week, but without serious action, like cutting back on groundwater pumping and planning smarter cities, at least 500,000 people are in serious danger. And the housing damage could easily rack up a jaw-dropping $109 billion by 2050. In the end, while North America isn't about to sink like a poorly made souffle, it's definitely showing some cracks in the crust. So maybe let's ease up on groundwater pumping, rethink how and where we build, and invest a little more in keeping our feet dry. After all, if the floor really does become lava someday, we're gonna wish we had at least fixed the leaks first.
There's a stretch of water that even the most experienced explorers fear. No matter what season you choose to cross it in, you risk meeting face-to-face with waves that can reach as tall as the Hollywood sign. I'm talking about the Drake Passage, the waterway connecting the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, stretching from Cape Horn at South America's southernmost tip to Antarctica's South Shetland Islands. It's about as wide as the distance from London to Berlin and takes up to 48 hours to cross. Some sailors compare getting on the other side to going to the moon. That's how challenging it is. Even the man who discovered it, Sir Francis Drake, never sailed these waters because they seemed too dangerous to him and opted for a calmer, although longer, Strait of Magellan. The passage took the lives of around 20,000 sailors and over 800 ships. Tourists who want to see Antarctica cross the Drake Passage on a regular basis, although it's still often called the world's most terrifying ocean crossing. The Antarctic Peninsula, where travelers go, isn't really part of Antarctica itself. It sticks out and points towards South America like two fingers almost touching it. The water gets squeezed between these two land masses, making strong ocean currents. The passage is part of the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the largest ocean current on Earth. The water rushes through the passage at a speed between 95 and 150 million cubic meters per second, which makes it rougher. And then there are winds that usually blow from west to east and are very strong between 40 and 60 degrees latitude. That's why those areas are called the Roaring 40s, Furious 50s, and Screaming 60s. Land slows down winds, which is why storms hitting Ireland and the UK get weaker as they move east. But Drake's latitude is the only place where winds can blow all around the Earth without being stopped by land. So they keep getting faster. These strong winds turn into huge waves that can hit ships really hard, normally around 13 to 16 feet tall. They're much higher than waves in the Atlantic. Drake Passage also has underwater mountains that you can't see. The huge current squeezes through this narrow passage and causes waves to crash against these mountains underwater. These internal waves create whirls that bring cold water up from the deep ocean. So it's not just rough on the surface, the water is wild all the way down. The first sailor managed to sail around Cape Horn and through the Drake Passage in 1616. It was a Dutch navigator, Willem Schouten, in 1616. But the most famous attempt to cross it was undertaken by Sir Ernest Henry Shackleton on his ship named Endurance. He and 27 of his men set off from South Georgia, aiming to reach Vassal Bay in Antarctica. But things didn't go as planned. On January 19, 1915, their ship got stuck in the ice. And by October, it began to sink. They camped on floating ice for 2 months before sailing lifeboats to a remote, icy place called Elephant Island. Shackleton and 5 men made a risky journey to South Georgia to get help. It took them 15 days to cross Drake Passage with hurricane winds. Finally, they arrived safely and organized a rescue for the rest of their crew. Scientists found the shipwreck of Endurance only in 2022, 10,000 feet below the water. In December of 2019, 6 fearless athletes decided to cross the Drake Passage by rowing a boat for the first time in history. It took them 12 days of non-stop rowing with a 90-minute rotation of rowers. They managed to do it, and it was probably the hardest possible way to cross the passage. The athletes mentioned it was cold, wet, and dirty, and the waves hit them like walls. The weather in the Drake Passage changes a lot, but ship captains can always see it coming and change their path. They will move the departure time to have a safety margin and not to get stuck in the middle of the passage in the worst possible conditions. Sometimes, the journey will be smooth and calm, and they call it Drake Lake. Other times, people on the ship will feel rough waves, which is called Drake Shake. Some experienced captains who often cross the passage say that the Drake Lake effect happens once in every 10 crossings, and they see the Drake Shake once or twice in every 10 journeys. A schooner or a kayak will probably not survive the journey among giant waves, but modest vessels and cruise ships have sturdy hulls and advanced stabilizing mechanisms. So, the journey isn't that dangerous anymore, but still, it's quite an adventure, especially if you're seasick. If you don't feel like risking it but want to travel from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean by water the fast way, the Panama Canal is waiting for you. People first started thinking about making a water path across Panama in the 16th century. Back then, a Spanish explorer found out that only a thin piece of land separated the two oceans. But it seemed impossible to build it because of the mountains and thick jungle, so the idea had to wait a couple of centuries. Finally, in 1880, France, led by the man who built the Suez Canal in Egypt, tried to make the canal. But the people who started the construction soon found out it was much harder than it looked on a map. The land in Panama was one of the toughest and most dangerous places to dig a big waterway. Workers had to literally move huge mountains in a jungle full of snakes, where it was really hot and rainy. During the wet season, heavy rain turned rivers into wild rapids and soaked the workers. Sometimes, they didn't see the sun for 2 weeks, and their clothes stayed wet all the time. Big rocks were falling, and tiny mosquitoes that carried malaria made people very sick. And then, an earthquake happened on top of everything. They were losing thousands of people. That's why France decided to abandon the project after 7 years. Then, the United States bought the French assets in the canal zone and finished it by 1914. It cost the US around $375 million. The 50-mile-long passage of water saves ships traveling between New York and San Francisco 7,872 miles. Around 14,000 ships use it every year and pay around $1.8 million in tolls. So it looks like it all paid off. Another challenging waterway in this part of the world is the Amazon River. It's around 4,300 miles long and flows through 3 countries with over 30 million people living in its basin. But there isn't a single bridge across it. The river has many marshes and soft soils, so engineers would need to build very long bridges and very deep foundations, which costs a lot of money. Building bridges over deep water is tough, but in other places in the world, engineers can use things like floating platforms to help. The river's path and water levels change a lot during the year. During the dry season from June to November, the river is usually 2 to 6 miles wide. But in the wet season from December to April, the river can become as wide as 30 miles. And the water level can rise by 50 feet. That's why they can't build floating bridges or pontoons. The riverbanks are made of soft dirt that moves and erodes with the seasons, and it makes things even harder. It would have to be an absolutely unique project to overcome all these challenges. Luckily, there's no pressing need for a bridge across the Amazon right now. The river mostly goes through areas that are sparsely populated, so there aren't so many major roads to be connected by bridges.
Deep inside our planet, there are two massive blobs of rock that have puzzled scientists for years. They sit deep inside, opposite each other. One lurks under the Pacific Ocean, the other under Africa. And they're so weird, they even make seismic waves slow down. Their actual name is large low-velocity provinces, but they're just two enormous, mysterious blobs of rock, bigger than continents, stranger than anything else inside the Earth, and so dense they might be leftovers from another planet. Until recently, no one knew what they were, where they came from, or why they even exist. These mysterious blobs could hold the secret to Earth's deepest forces, powerful enough to shape earthquakes, drive volcanic eruptions, and even influence the evolution of life itself. And now, we might finally learn the truth about them. These geological monsters are hidden about 1,800 miles beneath the surface. Each one is 100 times taller than Mount Everest, so vast they defy explanation. Now, at first, scientists thought these were primordial remnants from Earth's early days. Maybe something giant smashed into Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, and this impact formed both the Moon and these blobs. Scientists believe it could have been a planet named Theia, a Mars-sized planet that existed somewhere around the asteroid belt and slammed into Earth back in the day. Others believe it could be something much more familiar, old chunks of Earth's crust. Perhaps they got pushed deep into the mantle by the movement of tectonic plates. And now, a new study shows that these blobs are massive piles of oceanic crust that have been sinking into the Earth for billions of years. They could have formed from the stuff that sinks into Earth when tectonic plates collide. Over 1 billion years, pieces of ocean crust could have been swallowed by the mantle. Eventually, they collected into two massive regions deep inside the planet. But even though both blobs form the same way, they aren't identical. There's this place called the Pacific Ring of Fire, a giant loop of volcanoes and earthquake zones around the Pacific Ocean. Well, the Pacific blob doesn't just stop growing and changing because it's constantly being fed fresh rock from that place. Tectonic plates crash into each other, and one plate sinks beneath another, pushing old ocean crust deep into the Earth. Since this keeps happening, the Pacific blob is heavier, denser, and more active than its twin under Africa. It's like a giant hot rock factory, constantly getting new material and reshaping itself over time. The African blob is much older and quieter than the one under the Pacific. It doesn't get fresh rock pushed into it as often. That's why, over time, it has blended more with the surrounding mantle. Since it's less dense, it behaves differently. It rises higher into the Earth's mantle, stretching 340 miles closer to the surface. And that might be why Africa has so many powerful volcanoes and rift valleys today. The biggest question is, how do they keep evolving? Scientists think that huge columns of hot rock, called mantle plumes, might be pushing up from deep inside the Earth, helping to drive the movement of tectonic plates in the Pacific. If they're right, then these giant underground blobs aren't just sitting there. They're almost alive in a way. They'd be constantly changing and shaping the surface of our planet. But why do they even matter? Because these weird underground structures may be shaping Earth's surface in ways we don't fully understand yet. You see, first, they might influence Earth's magnetic field. That's because they affect how heat moves through the mantle and core. They might also hold clues about the history of plate tectonics. Studying them could help us figure out when subduction began on Earth, whether it was over 4 billion years ago or much more recently. These guys might also be secret puppet masters behind volcanic activity. There's a theory that blazing hot rock from deep inside the Earth, the same kind that creates volcanic hotspots, might be rising straight from the giant blobs in the mantle. Some of the biggest volcanoes on Earth, including those in Hawaii, Iceland, and Yellowstone, sit directly above the suspected rising plumes from these blobs. If these blobs are fueling these volcanoes, then they could be responsible for shaping Earth's continents, climate, and even mass extinctions throughout history. And well, that's horrifying. That would mean that these giant structures might burst through Earth's crust one day, unleashing catastrophic supervolcanic eruptions, and these eruptions would last for millions of years. Beneath the Earth's surface also lies monsters unlike anything else on this planet – supervolcanoes. They're so massive, so destructive, and so rare that no human has ever witnessed one erupt. A regular volcanic eruption can be terrifying. Lava spewing into the sky, ash choking the air, entire cities buried under fire and stone. But a supervolcano? Well, that's something else entirely. A supervolcano isn't just big, it's a category of its own. Their eruptions rip apart the Earth itself, creating massive craters called calderas. Some of them are over 30 miles wide. A regular volcanic eruption might spew out a few cubic miles of lava and ash. A supervolcano unleashes more than 240 cubic miles of material. That's enough to bury an entire continent in ash. An eruption like this would be newsworthy, to say the least. First, a wall of fire would blow up into the sky. Ash would block out the sun for years, dropping global temperatures. Entire countries could be buried under meters of ash, making farming impossible. Famine, extreme cold, and toxic air could wipe out entire civilizations. It wouldn't just be a local disaster, it would be global. In fact, two of the worst mass extinctions in Earth's history, where almost all life was wiped out, might have been caused by supervolcanoes, not asteroids. The biggest and most horrifying one was at the end of the Permian period. Literally, about 90% of all marine species and 70% of land species went poof. Scientists have counted about 20 supervolcanoes on Earth today. The most famous ones are Yellowstone in the US, Toba in Indonesia, and Topao in New Zealand. Now, the last time Yellowstone erupted was roughly 2 million years ago. It released almost 590 cubic miles of material, enough to bury a city like New York. That was just one of 3 Yellowstone supereruptions. The most recent supervolcano to erupt was Topao in New Zealand. This happened about 26,500 years ago. But supervolcanoes don't just destroy, they reshape the entire planet. About 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano erupted in Indonesia. Some scientists believe it triggered a volcanic winter that lasted an entire decade. There are also theories that suggest that this eruption nearly wiped out early humans. It reduced their numbers to just a few thousand survivors, although that's just speculation. Either way, we know for sure that supervolcano eruptions have changed the course of history. So, how do we prepare for them if this could happen at any moment? Well, scientists monitor volcanoes constantly, looking for warning signs. It could be stuff like rising magma, ground swelling, earthquakes beneath a volcano, changes in gas emissions, and so on. The problem is that while we can predict short-term eruptions, the long-term ones are still a mystery. Yellowstone last erupted 630,000 years ago. It's literally overdue for another eruption already. But volcanoes don't work like clocks. Just because one erupted in the past doesn't mean it will definitely go wild again, and the time between eruptions could be random. Scientists think Yellowstone could erupt again, but it might be just a small lava flow instead of a super eruption. Are we ready for a super eruption if it happens? Probably not. Scientists say we're more prepared for an asteroid strike than a supervolcano eruption. When Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai erupted in 2022, it cut off communications, caused tsunamis, and filled the sky with ash. And that was only a magnitude 5 eruption. A supervolcano would be orders of magnitude worse. So, good luck sleeping at night knowing these guys will erupt again. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in 100,000 years. Nah, don't lose sleep over it. Consider South America and Africa. Don't they kind of look like they fit together, like puzzle pieces? Well, they actually did. But about 130 million years ago, South America was like, bye, and slowly started drifting away. These days, it's around 1,800 miles from Africa, and it's still on the move. Every year, the continent shifts a little more toward the Pacific Ocean. So, how's that even happening? Tectonic plates are constantly moving. That's what makes the Earth's surface shift over time, going from this to what we see today. But those movements happen so slowly that you and I can't see them go. So, no, Brazilians or Chileans aren't out there feeling their continent inching westward. But the numbers don't lie. South America is moving, and apparently all it wants is to get as far away as possible from this massive underwater mountain range called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. But what exactly is pushing the land toward the Pacific Ocean? It is the heat inside our planet. Way down beneath the ocean, there are cracks in the Earth's crust, and magma, super hot melted rock, rises up through those cracks. When that happens, the magma cools and hardens into solid rock. Over time, this process might build underwater mountains, like the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And as more new crust forms, it begins to push the older crust out of the way. In the process, tectonic plates and the continents riding on top of them get pushed along. Now, on the other side of South America, over by the Pacific, there is the Nazca Plate. It's heavier and it's moving eastward. Since it is denser, it is sliding underneath the South American Plate. This entire process is called subduction, and it's happening at a rate of about 3 inches per year. By the way, the collision between these two plates is what's behind all those breathtaking volcanoes scattered throughout the Andes, and it's also making the continent move. So, if everything goes according to plan, projections show that South America will end up more centered in the Pacific Ocean in the future. But some models suggest something way crazier. Before we get into that, though, we need to clear something up. Why on earth isn't Africa following in South America's footsteps? I mean, shouldn't it be drifting west too? Well, not quite. Africa is doing its own thing because it sits on the African Plate. So the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is located between those two continents, and just like it pushes the South American Plate, it also pushes the African Plate, but in the opposite direction. It's like this ridge is trying to split up two ex-besties, you know? But there's more. Africa is also being influenced by the East African Rift. That's one of those massive cracks we talked about earlier, but it's happening on land, which makes it extra dramatic. This is what's causing the continent to slowly split apart. It's a long story, but let's just say the rift is pulling Africa in more directions than South America ever had to deal with. Okay, now it is finally time to talk about that crazier thing that might happen to South America and everything around it in the future. Theory number 1. It could break away from North America. I know, super dramatic, but don't panic. We're talking hundreds of millions of years from now, and I won't be around. You see, both continents are moving in the same general direction, but at different speeds. The North American Plate is cruising along at about 1 inch per year, while South America is moving a bit faster. So even though they're heading the same way, they are not keeping pace. Over time, as the Atlantic Ocean continues to widen and the Pacific keeps shrinking, all this tectonic movement could eventually pull the Americas apart. Theory number 2. Marine life could go through some major changes. Right now, the Americas act as kind of a giant wall between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Because of that, sea animals have evolved differently on each side. Take the green sea turtle, for example. The ones living in the Atlantic tend to be bigger and lighter in color. Meanwhile, their Pacific cousins are usually smaller and darker. But if, one day, there is no land blocking these two populations from mixing, they would end up with brand new migration routes, new nesting spots, and a lot more overlap in their territories. Now, multiply that scenario by hundreds of other species, and things could really get shaken up. We're talking about new interactions, unexpected competition, and maybe even the rise of entirely new species. Alright, theory number 3. America might meet Africa again. Right now, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is busy creating a new seafloor, and because of that, the Atlantic Ocean is slowly getting wider. But in about 125 million years, scientists believe that process could come to a stop. Instead of the seafloor spreading apart, the ocean floor might start getting pulled under the continents. When that happens, the Atlantic will stop growing and start shrinking. And the water section between South America and Africa is likely to be the first part pulled beneath the land. That means the Americas and Africa could meet again. And when that happens, border countries could turn into super shaky places, with earthquakes happening all the time and brand new volcanoes popping up left and right. The eastern United States would no longer be known for the peaceful green slopes of the Appalachians, but for snow-covered giants that occasionally spew lava and ash, more like the Cascade Range out west. Countries would end up with totally new neighbors. Brazil might line up with Nigeria and Cameroon. Uruguay could be sitting right next to Angola. And Argentina might be sharing a border with South Africa. So if these two continents really do merge, how intense would that be? Well, for starters, this new supercontinent would instantly become the biggest one on Earth, about 1.5 times the size of Asia. And chances are, a brand new mountain range would form right where the continents meet, creating a natural border between nations. Being part of the same massive continent could make a lot of things way easier. For one, tourism could totally take off. People traveling between countries by land without needing pricey plane tickets could be a game changer. But it wouldn't stop there. Other types of economic activity could get a major boost too. Now on one side we have South America, which already produces and sells a wide variety of foods, from wheat to bananas, beef, cocoa, soybeans, hey, you name it. On the other side, there is Africa, exporting things like textiles and clothing. That alone would make them a super powerful bloc when it comes to trading raw goods. But can you name another important thing these two continents have in common? Yep, petroleum. Countries in South America, like Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia, are major oil exporters. And over in Africa, you've got Nigeria, Algeria, and Libya doing the same. Now, can you see just how powerful that kind of union could be? Meanwhile, let's talk about animals. These two massive lands coming together could lead us to wild meetups, like a capybara sharing space with a Nile crocodile, or a sloth seeing a hyena from the top of a tree. This could even lead to new animal hybrids showing up, like a tabby crocodile or a sloth hyena. Okay, those weren't the cleverest names, and honestly, these animals wouldn't be able to mate or even wouldn't want to. But you get the point, right? It's not all positive, unfortunately. New species showing up could become predators, competitors, or even parasites to the native plants and animals. It would take a long time for things to settle into a new balance in those border regions. But honestly, no one really knows how long it would take. The only thing I do know is neither of us will be around to see it, which is okay. Get ready, because one of the Pacific Ocean's most active volcanoes might blow any minute now. Scientists monitoring axial seamount, a gigantic underwater lava factory just off the coast of Oregon, say it could erupt literally any time between today and early 2026 at the latest. Yes, it's underwater, but don't get tricked by the ocean's cover. This beast is almost 3 times taller than the Empire State Building. This volcano is inflating like a souffle at a Michelin-starred restaurant, and scientists are so excited they will live stream it. Seriously! So here's the thing. This volcano will explode at any moment now because, well, it's inflating fast. Over the past few months, researchers have noticed that the seafloor is literally rising. It's like Axial is doing its best impression of a waterbed filled with molten rock. Scientists call this inflation, which sounds like something you'd complain about after Thanksgiving dinner. But in volcano terms, it means magma is piling up underground, causing the seafloor to bulge like a souffle that's this close to collapsing. Now, an underwater volcanic eruption might not sound so exotic. After all, most volcanic activity on Earth happens under the sea. Believe it or not, there are more than 1 million submarine volcanoes quietly churning lava beneath the waves as you watch this. The ocean floor is Earth's biggest volcanic hotspot. What makes axial seamount so thrilling is that it's under intense scientific surveillance, unlike any other underwater volcano. It's like the star player in a volcanic reality show, with a network of ocean-bottom instruments giving researchers real-time updates on magma movements, seismic tremors, and crust deformation. In fact, axial seamount hosts the world's first-ever underwater volcanic laboratory. Scientists have been keeping a constant eye on it since the 1990s, when they installed sensors that now relay live data straight from the seafloor. This kind of monitoring is unheard of elsewhere and has turned Axial into a geological celebrity, one whose behavior we can track with remarkable precision. Besides, Axial is hilariously predictable. It erupts roughly every decade, and right on cue, it's gearing up for another performance. By mid-2024, it had inflated to nearly the same level as before its last eruption, which means the countdown is on. Scientists are so confident in its schedule that they've set up a volcanic advent calendar, waiting for the day when Axial decides to pop. But hold on, axial seamount isn't just your average underwater volcano. It's got style, personality, and a geological identity of its own. Now, most underwater volcanoes, called seamounts, tend to look like cones or flattened domes. Axial laughs in the face of tradition with its unfashionably rectangular caldera, a 2-by-5-mile crater that looks like it was designed by a geologist with a ruler and a grudge against curves. Most volcanoes opt for the classic circular look, but Axial, it went full avant-garde. This caldera is punctuated by fissures, vents, lava channels, and mysterious dome-like structures that rise hundreds of feet high. It's like the volcano's wearing a funky geometrical crown instead of the usual rounded hat. What's more, Axial's location is like prime real estate for geological fireworks. It sits right where two major forces collide, literally. First, it's on the Juan de Fuca Ridge, an underwater mountain range formed where two tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, like a zipper being undone. Second, it's perched atop the Cobb Hotspot, a deep mantle plume that acts like Earth's sneaky magma espresso machine, pumping molten rock from deep inside the planet and fueling a whole chain of seamounts. To put it plainly, it's like the tectonic plates are reluctant dance partners, sliding away from each other, while the Cobb Hotspot acts as the DJ, turning up the heat and keeping the magma party going. This dual influence creates a complex plumbing system inside the volcano, with magma chambers filling, draining, and shifting in ways scientists are still trying to decode. The competition between the spreading plates and upwelling magma is what gives Axial its unique geological fingerprint, and it's also why this volcano keeps surprising us. Now, we said that Axial Summit isn't just a crater. The truth is that inside, the action gets even weirder and cooler, well, hotter, but you get it. Axial hosts black smoker hydrothermal vents, which blast superheated water at temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit. This is no ordinary underwater hot tub. These vents create one of Earth's most extreme environments, where bizarre creatures thrive in total darkness and scalding heat. Giant tube worms, crabs, colonies of bacteria, and even octopuses live off the mineral-rich plumes that gush from these vents, forming ecosystems completely independent from sunlight and photosynthesis. It's like an alien world beneath the waves, thriving off the volcano's fiery breath. These vent communities are crucial to science, not just because they're strange, but because they may resemble the earliest ecosystems on Earth. Some researchers believe life on our planet may have originated in similar deep-sea hydrothermal environments billions of years ago. Studying them could also help us search for life on icy moons, like Europa and Enceladus, where similar vents might exist beneath their frozen surfaces. When Axial erupts, it's like a natural reset button for these communities. The lava wipes everything out, but within months, life comes roaring back. Proof that even in the most hostile environments, real estate is always in demand. For those worrying about tsunamis or coastal disasters, relax. Axial's eruptions are the underwater equivalent of a slow cooker. The immense water pressure keeps things chill, well, scalding, but not explosive. So the worst thing that happens is some lava decorates the seafloor, and a few crabs have to find new vents to squat in. This means no massive ash clouds or explosive blasts that could reach the surface. Instead, lava oozes out and spreads across the seafloor, sometimes traveling for miles. But for scientists, this eruption is the golden ticket. Understanding axial patterns could help predict eruptions elsewhere, even on land. Plus, its bizarre ecosystems offer clues about how life might survive on other planets. Not bad for a volcano that mostly just sits around looking rectangular. Still, the volcano's activity can be heard in the form of thousands of small earthquakes every day. Thousands. As if the volcano itself was groaning and creaking, preparing to burst open. Again, we won't feel a thing, but at least they'll help scientists track the magma's movements and the volcano's eruptive cycle. Now, one of the coolest parts of this story is that scientists are preparing to live stream Axial's next eruption for the first time ever. Imagine watching an undersea volcano in action, live, as it's painting the ocean floor with fresh lava. It's like a front row seat to a natural fireworks display, thousands of feet beneath the waves. The livestream will come courtesy of the Ocean Observatory's initiative, which maintains a series of fiber optic cables linking Axial's instruments directly to shore. It's the Wi-Fi of the deep sea, and it's about to broadcast molten rock in HD. And there's another twist. Scientists have noticed a curious pattern in Axial's eruptions. All three of its most recent eruptions, in 1998, 2011, and 2015, happened between January and April, the months when Earth starts moving away from the Sun. So why? Well, it might have something to do with the Moon's gravitational pull. The Moon's orbit causes ocean tides to rise and fall, which changes the pressure on the seafloor and could help nudge the magma chamber to its breaking point. I guess the Moon isn't just a romantic light in the night sky. It might be the ultimate volcanic whisperer. So, one thing's for sure, when Axial goes, it'll be the best documented underwater eruption in history. So, keep your eyes peeled. This is one natural spectacle you won't want to miss. And who knows, if we're lucky, we might even get deep-sea eruption ASMR out of the deal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be refreshing the live feed like it's a Taylor Swift ticket sale.
On January 26, 1700, one of the biggest earthquakes in history hit off the coast of the United States. It had a magnitude of 9, which puts it in the top 10 most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. This earthquake triggered a huge tsunami and changed the coastline all the way from southern British Columbia down to northern California forever. Back then, the area wasn't very populated, but thanks to some clever research, scientists figured out exactly what happened that day by looking at old geological records, tree rings, and even some history from Japan. On the same day as the earthquake, a massive tsunami also hit Japan's eastern coast. For a long time, no one connected the two, but in the 1980s and 90s, researchers realized the tsunami in Japan had been caused by the earthquake in the Pacific Northwest. They were also able to pinpoint the exact day, January 26, 1700. They even found old trees in coastal Washington that had all perished around the winter of 1700, which matched up perfectly with the timing of the earthquake. The earthquake came from the Cascadia subduction zone, a fault where the Juan de Fuca plate slides under the North American plate. This fault stretches about 700 miles, from northern Vancouver Island in British Columbia to Cape Mendocino in California. The pressure from the moving plates builds up over time, and eventually, another big, devastating earthquake will hit the same region. It's just a matter of time. By looking at the geological records, past tsunami deposits, and signs of land level changes, scientists can figure out how often these huge earthquakes happen. Emergency planners have been preparing for the next big quake, often calling it the big one. Scientists believe earthquakes in the Cascadia subduction zone happen every 200 to 1,000 years. And since the last major one was over 300 years ago, the Pacific Northwest is definitely due for another. When it happens, the earthquake is expected to be as big as the one from 1700. But this time, it'll affect around 15 million people. The devastation will be severe. Buildings will collapse, roads and runways will crack, and bridges will fall. Communication in and out of the area will be cut off. But the worst part? The earthquake will trigger a massive tsunami that might hit parts of the Washington coast in as little as 10 minutes. It's not a matter of if, but when the Cascadia subduction zone will break. When it happens, it will be the worst disaster the US has ever faced. Worse than the Hurricane Katrina or Superstorm Sandy. It'll impact an enormous area stretching from southern British Columbia all the way down through Oregon to northern California. That means millions and millions of people will be affected. Fairchild is considered a backup staging area for handling the aftermath of the earthquake, with Grant County International Airport in Moses Lake being the main one. For those who will survive the initial quake and tsunami, the aftermath could be just as disastrous. Aftershocks will follow and transportation will be a mess. Roads will be damaged or completely blocked, airports will shut down, and most of the main routes, like Interstate 5, will have bridges destroyed. This means food and water supplies will be cut off, and it will be incredibly difficult for help to get in or for people to escape. Gas pipelines will most likely be damaged too, and restoring them could take anywhere from a few days inland to weeks or even months along the coast. Power outages will be widespread within 100 miles of the coast throughout the entire Pacific Northwest. And water could be out for 3 to 7 months. Even telecommunications will be down for 2 to 3 months across the Pacific Northwest, Alaska, and even parts of East Asia. The good news for eastern Washington is that it will mostly avoid the worst of it, thanks to natural barriers between the west and east sides of the state. The tsunami may hit the Columbia River Gorge, but it will lose energy quickly because of a sandbar under the river. The Cascade Mountains will absorb much of the earthquake's impact, so the east side won't feel it as strongly. And since eastern Washington won't get hit as hard, it'll be up to them to handle the aftermath of the quake. That means helping western Washington, taking in refugees from the areas that got destroyed, and delivering supplies to where they're needed. Scientists have looked at other major 8.0 to 9.0 magnitude earthquakes like the ones in Chile in 1960, Alaska in 1964, and Sumatra in 2004, and Japan in 2011. These kinds of quakes can shake the ground for anywhere between 6 to 10 minutes, and that's a long time for the ground to be shaking. Such quakes are super intense because they happen close to Earth's surface, so it's not just a quick shake. It's a long, strong one that can cause a lot of damage. If the Cascadia earthquake and tsunami were to hit tomorrow, over 13,800 people could lose their lives, and about 107,000 people could be injured. The economic toll in Washington, Oregon, and California could top $70 billion. To put that into perspective, we can compare these numbers with some other major earthquakes. In Chile's 1960 earthquake, about 1,650 people lost their lives. The 1964 Alaska quake resulted in around 140 lives lost. The 2004 Sumatra earthquake and tsunami took the lives of an estimated 280,000 people. And the 2011 Japan earthquake and tsunami caused over 20,000 casualties. Authorities know about the dangers of the Cascadia fault, but even with all the planning, no one can say for sure what will be needed when the big quake hits. Right after the earthquake and tsunami, the areas outside the immediate disaster zone won't be able to help much because roads and airports will be destroyed, and resources will be limited. How can we deal with this kind of disaster and its effects? We don't have all the answers yet. Right now, let's focus on the Cascadia subduction zone. It's a huge fault line that stretches about 620 miles from Vancouver Island to Cape Mendocino in California, sitting about 93 miles off the coast. It's like one tectonic plate is slowly sliding under another. When the plates are close to the surface, about 18 miles deep or less, they get stuck because of friction, kind of like pushing two rocks together. Over time, this creates a lot of pressure. When the pressure finally becomes too much, the plates slip, causing a massive earthquake. This is called a megathrust earthquake, and it can be huge. Below the area where the plates are stuck, there's a zone where the plates move really slowly. We're talking about just a few inches every few months. This slow movement helps to release some of the pressure, but it also builds up more pressure on the parts of the fault that are still stuck. This means that over time, it increases the chances of a huge earthquake happening. These massive quakes, called Great Subduction Zone earthquakes, can be stronger than magnitude 8.5. Megathrust earthquakes are the biggest earthquakes that happen. They can go over a magnitude of 9.0, which is insanely powerful. Just to put it in perspective, a magnitude 9.0 earthquake releases 1,000 times more energy than a 7.0 and 1,000,000 times more energy than a 5.0. These earthquakes happen when a lot of pressure builds up in a part of the fault that's locked, which means the plate can't move past each other. When that pressure gets too high, the fault finally ruptures, releasing all that built-up energy in one massive shake. The Cascadia subduction zone is super long. That's why if it were to rupture all at once, it could produce a large earthquake. Scientists have studied this region and found that about 18 miles below the surface, the fault is completely locked. The plates there aren't sliding past each other. But deeper down, the plates start to slide more smoothly, causing less friction. This is important because it tells us how much stress is building up in that locked zone, and how it could eventually lead to a major earthquake.
For 70,000 years, Taftan volcano successfully convinced everyone it was extinct, but new satellite images show that its summit is rising, like something inside is stretching it, rolling it over, and cracking its neck after the world's longest nap. Scientists aren't too happy about it, so let's see if you have a reason to be worried too. Volcanoes can wake up when earthquakes shake them awake or storms mess with underground water. But scientists checked. There weren't any big earthquakes or heavy rains in southeastern Iran, where it sits. So it must be gas or magma pressure that's moving Taftan. It's like a sealed soda can heating up from the inside. Before you even hear a hiss, the pressure is building silently, waiting for a weakness. That's why Taftan's movement is such a big red flag. Pressure changes mean new internal activity. Plus, the source of pressure below its surface is at just around 1,600 to 2,070 feet deep. And that's not a lot for a volcano. When the source of pressure sits that close to daylight, it can set off small explosions from steam or gas, even if no lava ever touches the surface. This type of explosion, called phreatic, happens when water underground gets so hot so fast that it blows up like a giant pressure cooker. In Hollywood movies, volcanic eruptions always look like rivers of lava chasing people down the street. But steam-driven explosions are different, sneaky, and unpredictable. One minute everything looks calm, and the next minute rocks and superheated steam blast into the air like Earth sneezed with the power of a jet engine. For Taftan, this is exactly the scenario scientists are afraid of. You don't need flowing lava to cause destruction. A steam-driven explosion can launch boulders the size of cars and shoot ash clouds thousands of feet up. Even if you don't live anywhere near Iran, Taftan isn't just a local issue. Volcanoes breathe out gases that travel with the wind, and Taftan produces sulfur-heavy emissions when it's active. Sulfur dioxide doesn't just smell bad, but messes with air quality, irritates lungs, and reacts in the atmosphere to form particles that can dim sunlight and cool temperatures. That means neighboring countries might feel the effects even if they never see the volcano. And if a phreatic explosion blasts ash high enough, it could drift into international flight paths like volcanic confetti nobody asked for. Even smaller eruptions can have ripple effects. Remember that time a volcano in Iceland with a name I won't ever pronounce correctly blew up in 2010? It disrupted all the air travel across the Atlantic,
And in our case, a modest ash plume drifting into major air corridors could ground flights across the Middle East, South Asia, and beyond. You know, gas emissions don't respect borders. They drift, mix, and settle wherever the wind decides to drop them. Alright, all this sounds pretty creepy, but with all the modern sensors, scientists should find out about an eruption in advance, right? Not really. As Taftan sits in a really remote region, setting up monitoring stations there is tricky, expensive, and frankly, was never a priority because everyone assumed the volcano was done for. So right now, satellites, not ground instruments, are doing most of the work. Satellites see the big picture, but instruments on the mountain add detail. And that's why it was so important for Taftan to be reclassified from extinct to dormant. Because dormant volcanoes need eyes on them 24/7. When a volcano is labeled extinct, countries don't invest in evacuation plans, hazard maps, or monitoring equipment. Changing Taftan's status forced everyone, from local officials to global scientists, to admit it can cause trouble. And that means preparing for ashfall, gas emissions, sudden eruptions, and the long-term questions. Questions like, what if this awakening isn't temporary? What if this is the beginning of a whole new activity cycle? Long-term, Taftan might settle down again, or it might be entering a period of renewed activity. Volcanoes don't run on human timelines. A short-term phase for a volcano could be days or years, and the uplifting summit might mean there's deeper magma movement, not just a surface burp. It has gone up by about 3.5 inches over 10 months between July 2023 and May 2024. And a mountain rising is like Earth inhaling. And if Earth inhales too deeply, it eventually exhales. And in volcanic terms, that exhale is nothing good. Right now, Taftan is breathing in, and nobody knows when it plans to breathe out. This already sounds like too much drama, but there's more where it came from. Some of the biggest, angriest supervolcanoes on Earth are starting to wake up. When one of these monsters erupts, the whole planet feels it, even people living thousands of miles away. Scientists worry because a super eruption could move faster than our ability to prepare food, evacuate cities, or deal with the chaos afterward. That's what makes supervolcanoes so scary. Not just the explosion, but how little time we might have to react. If you live near Naples, you already know at least one supervolcano and how it acts. Streets crack, steam leaks from the earth, the harbor fills with sediment, and swarms of small earthquakes rattle windows like underground thunder. All of that comes from Campi Flegrei, a massive supervolcano caldera that last erupted in 1538. For years, scientists read these signals as classic warnings of magma rising. But two recent studies, one in 2023 and another in 2025, completely changed how we understand what's really going on. And surprisingly, they brought a bit of hope with the danger. In 2023, studies zoomed in on carbon dioxide, a gas volcanoes pump out when magma starts acting up. At Campi Flegrei, CO2 levels jumped after 2005 to about 4,000 to 5,000 tons a day, which sounds like magma rising fast. But when scientists checked other gases like nitrogen and helium, the chemistry didn't fit that idea at all. It turned out that the extra CO2 came not from rising magma, but from super hot fluids underground, cooking the surrounding rocks and releasing gas on their own. In the 2025 study, lab experiments showed that the shaking comes mainly from a sealed underground water and steam reservoir. When that natural lid traps pressure, it eventually cracks and releases steam and sets off sudden quakes that people feel at the surface. That idea also explains something that always confused scientists. The earthquakes usually start close to the surface and then move deeper, which is the opposite of what rising magma would do. After the strongest shaking, the ground often sinks a little, like a balloon slowly deflating after you let some air out.
None of this means Campi Flegrei is suddenly safe though. Magma still sits deep underground, and steam-driven explosions can still blast out rocks, ash, and scorching gas without any lava warning you first. What's really changed is how scientists think about the danger. Just watching and waiting isn't enough anymore. If humanity only had 12 months of warning before a supervolcano eruption, we'd struggle badly. Stockpiling food, relocating people, keeping supply chains alive. It would all feel almost impossible. But don't freak out yet, because supervolcano eruptions are extremely rare. The last one happened about 26,500 years ago in New Zealand. On average, scientists think a super eruption happens roughly once every 100,000 years, but Earth doesn't follow neat schedules like a calendar. Sometimes these eruptions cluster closer together, and then the planet stays quiet for a long time. Two massive super eruptions shook the planet within the last 100,000 years. About 74,000 years ago, Indonesia's Toba volcano blew up with such force that it blasted ash across Asia, lowered the temperatures around the world, and may have pushed early humans to the brink of extinction. Then, around 26,500 years ago, New Zealand's Taupo volcano unleashed an eruption, covering huge areas in ash and reshaping the landscape we see today. There's always a chance another super eruption could arrive earlier than we expect. That uncertainty is what keeps scientists awake at night. Stop for a second and look at the ground beneath your feet. Is it a quiet suburban street, a flat basketball court, or maybe a peaceful stretch of farmland? You probably feel safe because there isn't a giant smoking mountain on the horizon. But that safety is an illusion. Yeah, sure. Yellowstone, Vesuvius, or Mount Fuji, those are the celebrities of the geological world. Giants that dominate the skyline and sometimes blow their tops. But what about a hidden threat? One that doesn't look like a volcano at all. It's invisible, it's silent, and thousands of these traps are scattered across the planet, lurking right under the foundations of our biggest cities. Scientists call them monogenetic volcanic fields. To the untrained eye, they don't look like volcanoes at all. They disguise themselves as innocent hills, flat plains, or just lovely lakes. For decades, they were mainly ignored because of their small size. But new data suggests these hidden systems are far more dangerous than previously thought. And unlike the big giants that give weeks of warning rumbles, these invisible volcanoes specialize in surprise attacks. Hold tight. To understand the danger, we have to look at the plumbing. A standard volcano acts like a simple chimney. There is a central magma chamber and a main pipe leading to the surface. Eruption after eruption, lava flows out the same vent, building a massive cone over thousands of years. Monogenetic fields break all these rules. They don't build mountains. They don't reuse the same pipe. Instead of a chimney, imagine a cracked windshield. Magma deep underground scans for any weakness in the crust over a massive area. It pushes up, cracks the surface, erupts once, usually violently, and then calms down forever. The next time magma rises, it won't use that old vent. It will find a new crack 5 miles away, or 10. This means you can't just monitor one specific mountain. The entire region is a danger zone. And because each volcano is a one-and-done event, the landscape is deceptive. You could drive past the site of a violent ancient explosion every day on your way to work and simply see a grassy knoll. The scary part is the speed. In these fields, magma can rocket from 30 miles down to the surface in less than 24 hours. It moves at a speed of up to 4 miles per hour. That sounds slow for a car, but for melting rocks, that is the speed of an elevator. This isn't just a theoretical problem for empty deserts. Take Auckland, New Zealand. It's a stunning modern city with beautiful harbors and over 1 million residents. But Auckland is built directly on top of a geological minefield. Sounds a bit crazy, right? Beneath rugby stadiums, parks, and busy intersections lies the Auckland Volcanic Field. Those scenic green hills scattered across the city aren't just landscaping. They're the remains of over 53 separate volcanic eruptions. Rangitoto Island, which sits just offshore, emerged from the ocean only 600 years ago.
In geological time, that was 5 minutes ago. For years, this field was considered sleepy, but recently, scientists have started noticing subtle changes. The terrifying reality of a field like this isn't that a volcano we already know will erupt again. It's that a new one can pop up and go from zero to a disaster in the blink of an eye. A bubble of magma could rise silently beneath a factory, a highway interchange, or a residential neighborhood. There is no designated safe zone because the threat is spread across the entire city map. History gives us a brutal example of how fast this happens. In 1943, a farmer named Dionisio Pulido was plowing his cornfield in Mexico, on the outskirts of Mexico City. It was a normal Tuesday. Suddenly, the ground cracked open right in front of him. Smoke hissed out, smelling of rotten eggs. Within 24 hours, that small crack in a flat field had transformed into a raging volcano 160 feet tall. Within a week, it stood 500 feet high. This was the birth of Paricutin. It wiped out 2 entire towns, leaving only the stone steeple of a church poking out of the hardened lava, a haunting monument that still stands today. This geological nightmare started in a simple cornfield, and it wasn't an isolated incident. Look at the Harat Rahat field in Saudi Arabia. In 1256, a massive fissure opened up near the city of Medina. It spewed lava for 52 days, creating a river of fire 14 miles long. Today, that same volcanic field is still there, and modern Medina has expanded right on top of the ancient lava flows. Now, apply that same story to a suburb of Los Angeles, a district in Tokyo, or a neighborhood in Europe. In a matter of days, an entire city can be buried under ash. The risk is global, ranging from over 1,800 vents in the American Southwest to the restless Eifel region in Germany and similar fields in China. Experts warn that the real risk here isn't size, but frequency and location. These volcanoes tend to be explosive. When magma rises rapidly and hits groundwater, which is common under cities and fertile farmland, it flashes into steam. This creates a phreatomagnetic explosion. Instead of a slow, oozing river of lava that people can walk away from, the ground acts like a shotgun blast. It sends a massive column of ash and rock shooting into the atmosphere. In our modern world, this is a recipe for chaos. We rely on delicate systems, air travel, GPS signals, just-in-time supply chains. You don't need a supervolcano to crash the global economy. A small eruption near a major logistics hub is enough. Remember the 2010 eruption in Iceland? That wasn't even a big explosion by historical standards. Yet, the ash cloud grounded over 100,000 flights, and 10 million passengers were stranded. Volcanic ash melts inside jet engines, while toxic dust poisons crops and contaminates water reservoirs with heavy metals. It creates a domino effect. One small eruption in the wrong place triggers a cascading failure of global infrastructure. And the most alarming part is that the signals are already there. Recent geological studies have shown an uptick in activity in these distributed fields. It isn't always violent earthquakes. Often, it's bradyseism, the slow rhythmic breathing of the ground. We mentioned the Eifel region of Germany, where GPS data shows the land is rising by about 0.04 inches per year. It sounds tiny, but for geologists, that is a proper red flag. Scientists are detecting slight swells in the Earth's crust and weird spikes in carbon dioxide emissions in places that should be quiet. Magma is moving, but because these systems are so spread out, monitoring them is a nightmare. We have sensors all over Yellowstone. We watch Vesuvius 24/7, but almost no one is watching a random patch of desert in Arizona or a forest floor in Germany. These invisible volcanoes are poorly studied. We lack the baseline data to know if a tremor is just a truck driving by or the start of a Paricutin-style event. This lack of data means that when an eruption starts, authorities might have almost zero warning. In a polygenetic volcano, the mountain swells for months. In a monogenetic field, magma can shoot from the deep mantle to the surface in hours. By the time the evacuation order is written, the lava could already be breaking through the pavement. It isn't that hard to imagine the logistical nightmare. A city not known for volcanoes suddenly receives an alert. A vent is forming downtown. It sounds impossible. People delay leaving, They grab their phones to film the smoke. Then, explosions start. The ash creates a blackout. Power grids fail as wet ash shorts out transformers. Roads gridlock instantly. This scenario isn't science fiction. It's exactly what hazard models predict for places like the Auckland Volcanic Field or parts of the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt. We are building denser and denser cities on top of geological landmines. This doesn't mean we need to start digging bunkers, but it does require a shift in perspective. We have spent so much time worrying about the celebrity volcanoes that we forgot about the quiet ones. The Earth is a living, shifting engine that doesn't care about property lines or city limits. Scientists are now pushing for better monitoring networks, using satellites to track even the tiniest ground deformation in these boring, flat fields. Because the only way to survive a surprise attack is to see it coming before the ground cracks open. Peace and quiet on the surface doesn't always mean peace and quiet underneath. The Earth has plenty of secrets left, and some of them are just waiting for the right moment to surface.
So, you might have heard that Yellowstone National Park is sitting on top of a giant supervolcano. That's the reason why the area can boast powerful geysers and hot springs. But it also means that underneath Yellowstone, there is an enormous magma chamber. In 2015, researchers from the University of Utah found out that this chamber was much bigger than everyone had previously thought. They even found one more reservoir with magma under the top one. Apparently, the more spacious the chambers are, the more magma they contain. Together, the two reservoirs store a glob of magma that could easily fill the Grand Canyon not once, but 11 times. But you know the most worrying thing about the magma chambers? They tend to push against the ground above them. As a result, the land in Yellowstone rises about 1 to 2 inches a year. On top of that, Yellowstone has the status of an active volcano, and its volcanic explosivity index, yes, there is one, is 8 out of 8. Such a high number means that if this volcano erupted, it would be an apocalyptic event. To put it into perspective, the eruption of Pinatubo in the Philippines in 1991, which is considered the most powerful in living memory, was given a mere 6 on the volcanic explosivity index. Ha, loser. Now, let's figure out if there's anything to worry about. In March 2023, the University of Utah seismograph stations recorded 354 earthquakes in the entire region of Yellowstone National Park. Sounds like a lot. But keep in mind that the most impressive event of the month was a mini earthquake of magnitude 3.7. It was part of a swarm of 106 earthquakes that began on March 29th and continued until the end of the month. Yep, earthquakes apparently also come in swarms, so be aware. Experts say that Yellowstone's seismic activity is, well, kind of more active than usual, but it's really nothing serious. A geophysicist working at Yellowstone Volcano Observatory called Michael Pollan claims that the volcano won't erupt anytime soon. For this to happen, there must be enough magma ready to erupt beneath the surface. Whew. There should also be enough pressure to cause this magma to rise. But neither of these conditions exist today. According to the expert, Yellowstone is stable now. At the same time, Pollan and his team are keeping track of all kinds of underground activity, looking for warning signs of possible eruptions. Some of them can be the frequency of earthquakes and ground deformation. Thousands of mini earthquakes, coupled with extreme changes in the surface of the ground in that area, can be alarming. The team also monitors the temperature of the park's thermal features. That's another noteworthy sign of a potential disaster: park-wide changes in geyser activity, as well as gas and thermal emissions. So, despite the media claims that Yellowstone is due to erupt soon because the last eruption happened 70,000 years ago, that's not how volcanoes work. Experts say that it's one of the most popular misconceptions about volcanoes. They don't follow timelines. If a supereruption did happen, though, the most worrying thing for us would not be the lava flows, and not an earthquake that would most likely accompany the natural disaster. No, the worst consequence of such a super eruption would be ash and ashfall. Let's have a look at what it was like when the Yellowstone volcano erupted many years ago. There have been at least 3 super eruptions in the history of the volcano. The most powerful of them was 2,500 times more devastating than the terrifying eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington state in 1980. As for the most recent super eruption, it was dubbed the Lava Creek eruption. It formed the Yellowstone caldera after spewing out an insane amount of dust, volcanic ash, and rock into the air. Recently, scientists have also learned about 2 other previously unknown supereruptions that happened around 9 and 8.7 million years ago. The younger of the 2 is now considered to be the largest recorded event of the whole Snake River Yellowstone volcanic province. Anyway, let's have a look at what was going on all those millions of years ago. Because I wasn't around then, so we're all assuming this stuff based on evidence. The first signs of the disaster appeared long before the catastrophe broke out. For thousands of years, the heat had been welling up from within the planet's insides. It had been melting rock beneath the planet's crust and leaving behind huge chambers. They were filled with a pressurized mixture of semi-solid rock, magma, water vapor, and different gases, including carbon dioxide. All this scorching underground soup was expanding since more and more magma arrived with time. The land over the volcanic system was rising upward almost unnoticeably. A year before the super eruption, Yellowstone gave a warning, a burp maybe, but that long ago there was no one who could interpret these signals. Plus, those alarming processes were mostly going on underground. For example, decompression releases gas bubbles. While bursting, such bubbles can often power particular kinds of eruptions. Months before the eruption, small-scale earthquakes became more frequent and more intense. The ground in many spots all over the supervolcano got hotter than it used to be. Surface lakes and groundwater also became warmer. If people had been around at that time, they would have noticed unusual steam fogging in that area. Not long before the eruption started, the growing pressure pushed the ground over the magma chamber up. This created a dome-shaped uplift. Narrow cracks started to open along the edges of this dome. Imagine opening a bottle of soda after you've shaken it. Something like that was happening near the volcano. Think Mentos and Diet Coke. The pressure was released through the fractures when gases were bursting out from under the surface. So right before the disaster, the ground around the Yellowstone volcano lifted. Geothermal pools and geysers heated up to boiling temperatures and got more acidic than usual. The magma started to rise toward the surface. At one point, the rock roof of the magma chamber couldn't resist anymore and the eruption kicked off. Small but constant tremors began to move the ground days before the catastrophe. But the real shaking didn't start until several minutes before the eruption. With a deafening roar, a massive column of lava and ash hurled up into the air. Within several minutes, a pyroclastic flow rushed across the area at a hurricane-force speed. Such a flow is a liquid mixture of half-solid lava pieces, volcanic ash, and hot, expanding gases. It looked like an extremely hot, toxic snow avalanche. With a temperature of about 1,300 degrees, it was burning everything in its path. The volcano kept pumping ash for days on end. For all living creatures, ash fallout was one of the most dangerous consequences of the eruption. Volcanic ash turns into glassy cement within seconds of being inhaled. Most animals didn't have a chance to survive. Even thick trees started to collapse under the weight of this dense substance. It only took a couple of days until a thick layer of ash covered huge territories. After the ash got into the stratosphere, the temperatures all over the world started to drop. The eruption was rich in sulfur, which is an effective sunblocker. That's why it soon got so cold that there was no summer in the whole world for the next several years. Animals couldn't find food and clean water. This natural disaster, called the Gray's Landing supereruption, was colossal. That's how researchers described it in their recent studies. it affected a huge territory. The streams of lava enameled an area as large as New Jersey in scorching hot volcanic glass. It instantly sterilized the land surface, wiping out all the plant life that had been thriving there before. Now, if such an eruption were to happen these days, it would cover Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming with almost 3 feet of toxic volcanic ash. Many regions would be plunged into darkness. Even the coast, where most Americans live, would experience problems with the spread of the ash cloud. It would destroy crops and contaminate pastures, ruin power lines and electrical transformers. Well, so I'm sure you'll agree with me, it's a good thing that such a disaster isn't expected to occur anytime soon. Hey, we got enough other stuff on our plate. Our planet's biggest and meanest supervolcanoes are waking up. When they erupt, you'll surely notice it, even if you live thousands of miles away from the epicenter. Scientists are worried we might not have enough time to prepare and deal with the consequences of a super eruption. There's some volcanic activity close to the Italian city of Naples. And no, it has nothing to do with the famous Mount Vesuvius, but with another volcano. This one is harder to see as it doesn't have a tall peak like Vesuvius. But don't let this bad guy trick you. It could be way more dangerous than its giant neighbor. It does have a huge crater that's about 8 miles wide. This volcano is called Campi Flegrei, and it's actually one of the largest volcanoes in Europe, sitting under the town of Pasquale. So, Campi Flegrei erupted 39,000 years ago with a bang so massive it spread ash across the whole Mediterranean region. It also caused the temperature to drop by over 16 degrees Fahrenheit across Eastern Europe. It was the biggest volcanic eruption in Europe in 200,000 years. Since then, Campi Flegrei has had smaller eruptions, and the last one happened in 1538. Now the area is full of small craters, hot springs, and bubbling pools, and they're all proof that this volcano is still very much alive and brewing something. Since the early 2000s, the ground in the giant crater and the town nearby have been slowly rising by about 1 to 1.5 inches every year. There were at least 150 earthquakes that shook this supervolcano lately. In May 2024, there was a 4.4 magnitude in the area, the biggest in the last 40 years. Residents had to leave their homes and camp outside, fearing there would be more earthquakes. No one knows how Campi Flegrei is going to behave in the following months or years, but the authorities are organizing evacuation exercises to prepare the population just in case. The Italian volcano looks like an innocent kitten compared to the real giants like Yellowstone. For a volcano to deserve the title of a super one, it must be able to produce catastrophic-scale eruptions and eject huge amounts of magma, ash, and volcanic gases. The Yellowstone giant meets these criteria. Even though it moves from time to time, the Yellowstone supervolcano hasn't erupted for 640,000 years. But when it does wake up, it might erupt with incredible power, about the same amount as 10 huge nuclear power stations can produce. Under the ground, beneath Yellowstone, there's a super hot area full of molten rock called magma. As more magma moves into a big space called a magma chamber, the ground above starts to swell or rise. When the magma cools down, the ground falls. Between 2004 and 2009, the ground at Yellowstone rose by almost 10 inches, but then it started to slowly go back down in 2010. Scientists aren't sure if it's going to erupt anytime soon. There's also another big volcano called Long Valley in California that has been active since 1980, and it can be a really big threat. Scientists studying this supervolcano found out that before its biggest eruption, 760,000 years ago, the buildup may have taken less than a year. Now, that's bad news, because a supervolcano eruption can have a huge effect on the world, like the eruption of the Toba volcano in Sumatra around 74,000 years ago. It became the biggest volcanic eruption the Earth had seen in 28 million years. It covered parts of Indonesia, India, and the Indian Ocean with a thick layer of volcanic debris, almost like a 6-inch blanket. The amount of rock it spewed out was like stacking nearly 3 million Empire State Buildings. The giant crater it left behind can still be seen from space. All the ash and gases shot up into the air and blocked some of the sunlight. It caused a volcanic winter that lasted about 6 to 10 years. Some scientists think this eruption might have even affected early humans. Around the time Toba erupted, the human population took a sharp dip, and there were far fewer people. Some say this is why all modern humans come from a small group of survivors. According to the Toba catastrophe theory, most early humans in Europe and Asia didn't survive the cold and harsh climate after the eruption, but a lucky group lived through all that in Africa. Not all scientists agree with this idea, and some archaeological and climate records show a different story. Another volcano that changed the world in a big way was Mount Tambora in 1815. The next year went down in history as the year without a summer. It was cold and rainy, and there was snow and frost even in the middle of summer, especially in Europe and North America. This happened because the volcano sent out a lot of sulfur dioxide into the sky, which spread all over the world and made the planet colder. When Tambora erupted, it caused huge tsunamis that smashed homes and took the lives of around 10,000 people. Afterward, about 80,000 more people passed away because of the consequences the eruption had caused in the world. The cold weather ruined crops, so food became really expensive. And because horses were the main way people traveled, the cost of oats that they ate went way up too. Some people even think this led to the invention of the bicycle in 1817 as a new way to get around. The eruption made the Earth colder for about 3 years. Now, even though the Tambora eruption was so powerful, Krakatoa, another volcano in Indonesia, stole the show when it erupted in 1883. It was just easier to spread information about it through telegrams and photos. Its final blast was the loudest recorded sound in history, and people could hear it on 10% of the entire Earth's surface. The eruption started a tsunami, with waves about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty. Now, if we only had 12 months to prepare for a supervolcano eruption, it would be really hard to store enough food and get ready. But don't panic just yet. Supervolcano eruptions are very rare, and the last one happened 26,500 years ago in New Zealand. Scientists think that a super eruption happens once every 100,000 years on average. But the sad part here is that the Earth doesn't follow a perfect timeline. There could be clusters of super eruptions with shorter gaps between them and then longer quiet periods. Since there have already been 2 super eruptions in the last 100,000 years, there's always a chance one could happen again sooner than we expect. Plus, although there are places like Yellowstone and Long Valley where we expect volcanoes to erupt, there are less obvious possible hotspots. In Chile, there's a volcano called Laguna del Maule that has erupted in the past and left behind a huge crater. Over the last 20 years, the ground there has been swelling really fast, rising up to almost 1 foot a year. Some people are worried that this could be a sign of a big eruption coming. But scientists say there's not enough magma yet to cause a super eruption. In Bolivia, the Juturancu volcano is also acting up. It's part of a group of volcanoes that have caused super eruptions in the past. Since the 1960s, the ground around Juturancu has been lifting, but the last eruption was 250,000 years ago. Even though the magma might be rising, it's not enough to worry about just yet. The chances of a super eruption happening during our lifetime are 1 in 1,400, which is pretty low, so you don't need to worry too much. But just like someone wins the lottery every week with very small chances, a super eruption could happen sometime in the future, and when it does, we'll need to be prepared.
The ground suddenly starts shaking. Clouds of gas start forming in the sky, making it dark during broad daylight. Bits of the ground start swelling, lifting, and even collapsing. These are the telltale signs of a volcano that is bound to erupt. And this is what could easily happen again with Mount Spur. It's only about 75 miles from Anchorage, one of Alaska's busiest cities. More than half of the population of the northernmost state of the US live there. There's also a huge amount of air cargo that passes through its international airport daily. So anytime a volcano this close to such a vital hub begins to get restless, people start paying attention. Just FYI, approximately 350 million people in the world live within the danger range of an active volcano. That means that around 1 out of 20 people live in an area at risk of volcanic activity. Alaskans probably wish that Spur's reawakening was fiction, but it's actually true. The Alaska Volcano Observatory picked up on several of these "I'm about to erupt" signs from Mount Spur. So much so that they raised the alert level to yellow, which means unrest above normal background levels. Spur erupted twice in the 90s, and it was pretty intense. If we were ranking volcanic eruptions on a scale from 1 to 10, these eruptions would rank a 6 or 7. Not that terrible, but still worth 10 to 17 million in damages. However, these numbers are nothing compared to Alaska's 1988 Redoubt eruption, another volcano that erupted and summed up a staggering $345 million in damages. Mainly because its ashes hit aircraft engines, such as the KLM 747 that lost power after all its engines went off due to the ashes. If people weren't paying attention to Alaska's unstable geology before that, well, they surely started to after it. When you think of the hazards of volcanic activity, the first thing that might possibly pop in your mind is Pompeii, Italy. Of course, that's the worst-case scenario, a city being engulfed by lava. Spur may seem innocent compared to Vesuvio, but it still took its toll. The last time it erupted in the 90s, and it threw volcanic aerosols over 60,000 feet into the atmosphere. Let's get our science straight here. Think of volcanic aerosols like liquid particles that are released into the atmosphere during an eruption. These particles are usually created when gases from a volcano, such as sulfur dioxide, combine with water and other particles that exist in our atmosphere. These aerosols can actually cool the Earth's surface since they reflect sunlight directly back into space. And that's not the worst part. It can stay in the atmosphere for several years after an eruption, causing lots of health issues. The eruption unleashed blazing fast avalanches of hot gas and ash called pyroclastic flows, along with thick, muddy floods known as lahars. Oh, and there were also the massive volcanic boulders. These rock chunks were huge, some over 3 feet long, and they blasted out from the volcano like nature's cannonballs, landing more than 6 miles away. All that volcanic heat melted part of a nearby glacier, kicking off debris flows that dammed up the Chakachatna River and created a whole new lake along the valley. Some good came out of Spur's first eruption, though. The main lesson was, volcanic monitoring pays off. The local monitoring was able to reduce the economic damage done by the eruption, especially for a city that has an intense air traffic. Spur is deemed as dormant for the moment, but it could go off anytime soon. You see, volcanoes are classified as active, dormant, or extinct, depending on how much action they're putting on. If it's still active, it's still rumbling and erupting somewhat regularly. Dormant means it's had some recent activity, but it's still lying low for now. And extinct, that's when it's been quiet for such a long time that we figure it's done for good. One of the US's most dangerous active volcanoes is Mount St. Helens. This volcano is actually responsible for the most powerful eruption in US history. Its last blast was so intense, it threw off about 1,300 feet off its summit. Basically, the top of the mountain vanished, and if you thought Mount Spur's ash cloud was impressive, St. Helens wins the competition since it launched its ashes 80,000 feet into the sky. Eastern Washington plunged into total darkness. But it wasn't just that. In a matter of 3 minutes, the eruption hurled 3.7 billion cubic yards of blazing rock and dust, enough to fill 1 million Olympic-sized pools across 230 square miles of lush forest. Actually, the earthquakes that anticipated the eruption started weeks before May 18, 1980. A ground shake of magnitude 5.0 went off, triggering a landslide on one side of the volcano. By the end of the official eruption date, 57 people had lost their lives. Nearly 7,000 big game animals like deer and elk were wiped out, and millions of birds laid scattered on the burnt earth. Researchers don't think St. Helens will blow at the same magnitude again anytime soon, but they're keeping an eye on it, because this volcano is not exactly finished. By the way, the word volcano comes from the Roman name Vulcan, which was the Roman deity of fire, and they often happen at the meeting point of tectonic plates, which are the pieces of the Earth's surface that fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. The so-called Ring of Fire, located in the Pacific Ocean, is the world's danger zone when it comes to volcanoes. It contains between 750 and 915 active volcanoes. The largest volcano located in the Ring of Fire, also the largest active volcano in the world, is the Mauna Loa. It's over 13,000 feet high, and it's located in Hawaii. Researchers say that Mauna Loa has been erupting for at least 700,000 years. Its most recent eruption began on the 27th of November 2022, and it lasted until December 13th. It's been quiet since the 80s until it decided to wake up again. Thanks to constant monitoring by the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, it didn't cause any casualties when it last erupted. Scientists have been investing big time on volcanic monitoring, not only to reduce economic hazards, but also to save lives. The most recent attempt has been to drill into volcanoes. Recently, a group of scientists went all the way to Iceland in one of the world's volcanic hotspots. There are around 33 active volcanoes in Iceland alone, but the one that is the most interesting to them the most is the Krafla volcano. The Krafla has erupted around 30 times in the last 1,000 years, and its most recent eruption was in the mid-1980s. The project, named Krafla Magma Testbed, or KMT for short, is hoping to advance the understanding of how magma behaves underground. The main advantage of this drilling research is predicting the risk of eruptions, but it can also help to push geothermal energy forward. I mean, can you imagine having electricity that is run by the limitless source of volcano power? The KMT team will begin drilling holes deep into volcanic ground in 2027. They're aiming at reaching over a mile into the ground. After all, it's different to monitor lava activity when it's on the surface than when it is still below ground. This will allow researchers to listen to the pulse of the Earth, according to them. They're saying this research is as revolutionary as the first time man went to the moon. Oh, and speaking of that, I was shocked to discover that volcanoes exist all throughout the solar system. Yep, other planets and moons have volcanoes too. The largest volcano in our solar system is Olympus Mons on Mars. It's a shield volcano, much like the ones that make up the Hawaiian Islands. It's about 370 miles wide. If we transported it all the way back to Earth, it would almost occupy all of Poland. Yikes.
The largest volcanic region on Earth is not in Africa or Japan, but under the ice of Antarctica. Scientists found 138 volcanoes in its western part, and if they decide to go wild, you'll surely notice it. They could melt huge amounts of ice that will move into the ocean, raise its level, and make our planet uninhabitable for humans. But before you pack your things to fly away to another planet, hear me out. Only 2 of the Antarctic volcanoes are officially classified as active now. And it would take a whole series of eruptions, decade after decade, to seriously impact the whole world. Mount Erebus, one of the 2 Antarctic volcanoes currently in action, proudly bears the title of the world's southernmost active one. It has been continuously erupting since at least 1972. It emits plumes of gas and steam and sometimes even spews out rocks, and scientists call it Strombolian eruptions. One of the coolest features is a lava lake in one of its summit craters, with molten material on the surface. Such lakes are rather rare because they need certain conditions to make sure the surface never freezes over. The second active volcano is Deception Island, a horseshoe-shaped landmass. It is the caldera of an active volcano that last erupted over 50 years ago. Scientists who monitor it say it shouldn't go wild anytime soon. Antarctica also has plenty of fumaroles. Those are volcanic vents that release gases and vapors into the air. In the right conditions, they can spew out enough stuff to build fumarolic ice towers up to 10 feet tall. Scientists keep an eye on the Antarctic volcanoes with seismometers that detect when the Earth starts trembling from volcanic activity. Sometimes they also use more complicated tech, but it's all really challenging because of how far away this polar region is and how tricky it is to get there. That's why no one can predict when one of the continent's volcanoes that are now sleeping might erupt. We can guess what this waking up would look like if we analyze the events from nearly 20,000 years ago. So, shall we? One of Antarctica's sleeping volcanoes, Mount Takahe, had a series of eruptions and spewed out a good amount of halogens rich in ozone back then. Some scientists say these events warmed up the southern hemisphere. Glaciers started to melt and help finish the last ice age. For these events to repeat, we'd need a series of eruptions with substances rich in halogens from one or more volcanoes that are now above the ice. It's an unlikely scenario, but since it already happened in the past, it's not completely impossible. As for volcanoes hiding under a thick layer of ice, it looks like their gases would hardly make it to the atmosphere, but they would be strong enough to melt huge caverns in the base of the ice and produce a serious amount of meltwater. The West Antarctic ice sheet is wet and not frozen to its bed, so this meltwater would work as a lubricant and set the overlying ice into motion soon. The volume of water that even a large volcano would generate in this way is nothing compared to the volume of ice beneath it. So, a single eruption wouldn't make a difference. But several volcanoes erupting close to or beneath any of the western Antarctica's big ice streams would. Those ice streams are rivers of ice that take most of the frozen water in Antarctica into the ocean. If they change their speed, then bring unusual amounts of water into the ocean, its level will rise. As the ice would get thinner and thinner, there would be more and more new eruptions. Scientists call it a runaway effect. Something like that happened in Iceland. The number of volcanic eruptions went up when glaciers started to recede at the end of the last ice age. So, it looks like, for massive changes, several powerful volcanoes above the ice with gases full of halogens need to get active within a few decades of each other and stay strong over many tens to hundreds of years. Antarctica stores around 80% of all the fresh water in the world, and if they melted all of it, global sea levels would rise by almost 200 feet. And then we'd have to look for a new planet to live on. But this again is an unlikely scenario. It's more likely that the eruptions under the ice will lubricate ice streams and seep water into the ocean, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. A super strong, super angry supervolcano could do it though, and it has already happened in the past. Over 200 million years ago, the world went through a major makeover with not one, not two, but 4 massive volcanic eruptions in huge pulses. The supervolcano called Camp had been erupting over and over for 600,000 years. It all happened in Wrangell, a large chunk of land that used to be a supermassive volcano stretching across what's now British Columbia and Alaska. And it wasn't the lava or the volcanic ash that ruined the environment. The eruption made carbon levels skyrocket. The planet would never be the same again. This volcanic activity might have helped dinosaurs grow from cat-sized critters into giants we saw in Jurassic Park. It kicked off a 2-million-year rainy season. It made the whole world hot and humid, and the dinos just loved it. Researchers dug deep into sediment layers beneath an ancient lake in Asia to uncover these secrets. They found traces of volcanic ash and mercury, clear signs of those epic eruptions. There were carbon signatures showing huge spikes in carbon dioxide levels. It made the atmosphere toasty, and the rain poured down. So the bad news is, another eruption like this could happen. The supervolcano beneath Yellowstone National Park has been sleeping for nearly 70,000 years. But if it wakes up, it would be many times more catastrophic than the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. It's considered the most disastrous volcanic eruption in U.S. history. It followed 2 months of earthquakes and injection of magma below the volcano that weakened and destroyed the entire north face of the mountain. The eruption column went 80,000 feet into the atmosphere and spread ash over 11 U.S. states and several Canadian provinces. The last Yellowstone eruption was 1,000 times greater than that. The ground above Yellowstone sits on a hot spot made of molten and semi-molten rock called magma. This magma stuff flows into a chamber beneath the park, about 4 to 6 miles down, making the ground puff up like a balloon. But then, as it cools down, the ground goes back to its usual state. Volcano watchers have been keeping an eye on this for a century. They noticed the ground lift up about 10 inches around 20 years ago, but since 2010, it's been going back down. The experts say we have no big eruptions on the horizon, so doomsday isn't coming anytime soon. But there's some underground activity going on lately which keeps us interested. Since humans haven't been around to witness every little thing Yellowstone does, it's kind of tough to say for sure what's brewing down there. Yellowstone has had some epic eruptions within the last couple million years. They happen like clockwork, with gaps of 600,000 to 800,000 years between them. The last big one was around 640,000 years ago, and it basically reshaped the entire landscape, spreading ash and debris as far as Louisiana. You can still see the aftermath of the last big eruption in the Yellowstone caldera today. Experts say a massive eruption like the last one is an unlikely scenario. We're more likely to see eruptions of steam and hot water or lava flows. When and with what force it will wake up remains a mystery to scientists. Imagine standing in the middle of Europe 40,000 years ago. The landscape is rough, cold, and unforgiving. Fast food is scarce, and there's no internet. Suddenly, from out of the woods steps a figure, stocky, strong, and with a face that is quite unusual. This human looks similar to us, but something about them is different. Their brow is heavy, their nose is broad, and their body seems to be built to fight nature itself. Well, congrats! You've just met a Neanderthal. You might have thought that Neanderthals were basically ancient humans, but that's not really true. We come from the same genus called Homo, but we, all modern humans, belong to one same species called Homo sapiens. However, there used to be lots of human species before, and Homo neanderthalensis was just one of them. And they actually were kind of cooler than us. So what in the world has happened to them? Neanderthals lived for a long time, for about 360,000 years, across Europe and parts of Asia. 40,000 years ago, the place we now call southern Italy was sitting on top of a huge disaster, a massive supervolcano called Campi Flegrei. This big boy is huge, about 9 miles wide. That's about 10 to 20 minutes in a car to get across it all. But there were no cars then, remember? At the time, it was quiet for a while, but one day, suddenly, it blew in what became one of the biggest volcanic eruptions Europe had seen in 200,000 years. The catastrophe was so crazy that ash, gases, and debris altered the climate across the entire continent. What comes next is usually called a volcanic winter. Average temperatures drop, the sky gets darker, and life becomes even harsher than it already is. The eruption, known as the Campanian Ingambrite, caused Europe to cool by as much as 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Doesn't sound like much? Well, the drop of even 1 degree would cause winters to become harsher, causing horrible snowfall, rains, and floods. Crops would struggle to grow, leading to food shortages. The weather would go wild, too, with storms and droughts. Hey, kind of like now. Except multiply this by 7. Events like these caused some huge chaos in modern times. You can imagine what it did to the Neanderthals. But in reality, a simple volcanic eruption shouldn't destroy an entire species, right? Well, yes. The truth is, the Neanderthals were already hanging by a thread back then, and all because of us. They've been in a tough spot for a while. They lived in places that are now parts of Europe, Western Asia, and the Middle East. Modern humans, us Homo sapiens, entered Europe and were giving them some serious competition for food and shelter. Homo sapiens were sneaky dudes, better at finding food, easily adapting to different environments, and using more advanced tools. We were pushing Neanderthals out, trying to get the same resources. We literally made their extinction a slow and very unpleasant process. So, while the volcano definitely made things worse, it wasn't their only problem. and they didn't completely disappear after the eruption. Some of them hung on in isolated places, like Gibraltar, for another 12,000 years. That's because it's likely most of the severe cooling actually happened farther east, away from where the Neanderthals were trying to survive, and it didn't hit their homes as hard as we thought. In fact, the eruption may have even helped them, at least for a while. Some scientists say that the volcanic fallout might have slowed down modern humans' expansion into Neanderthal territory and gave the poor fellas a little more time to survive. So, the Campiflagre eruption was a nasty event, but it only delayed the inevitable. Campiflagre is a wild card. It's also known as the Fields of Fire. The air itself there is thick with legend. The Greeks and Romans believed this volcano was the gateway to the underworld. Even an ancient Roman poet, Virgil, mentioned this in his famous story, the Aeneid. The hero Aeneas must descend into the underworld, and this place is exactly where he starts. Back in the day, this landscape was full of Roman villas, spas, and fish ponds. The elite had the time of their lives there. What they didn't know, though, was that they were standing on treacherous ground that could go crazy at any moment. The Campiflagre is not your typical volcano. You'd imagine a single towering peak, but the landscape looks deceivingly calm, with small features popping up here and there. But if you flew above it, the sight would be insane. A gigantic circular basin, peppered with volcanic cones and craters, like scars from the Earth's violent past. The danger here lies in its subtlety. The ground beneath your feet is constantly shifting, even when you don't notice it. Every so often, the land rises, only to sink again, sometimes by several feet, as magma or gas moves beneath the surface. It's incredibly creepy. The risk is almost invisible. The Campiflagre is a massive depression formed by two colossal volcanic eruptions. One of them was the one that cooked Neanderthals, and another happened 15,000 years ago. The most famous eruption, though, happened in the 16th century, and it was horrifying. The year was 1538. For years, the people of Paswali had noticed something unsettling. Land that once sat below the waves was slowly rising. What was once the sea had become new ground. Rumblings from deep within the earth were terrifying, but had become a normal part of life. Earthquakes started in the early 1530s, small at first, but in just 8 years, they became the norm. Until one day, on September 28th, horrifying tremors shook the ground. By the next evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a massive crack ripped open the earth near the ancient Roman town of Tripergole. From this gash spewed fire, smoke, and a rain of volcanic ash miles away. It was thick and muddy, likely mixed with underground water. The ground trembled as hot pumice rock was thrown high into the air. And then a new mountain began to rise from the land. This was the birth of what we now call Monte Nuovo. Eventually, things seemed to calm down, as if the earth was catching its breath. For days, things seemed quiet. Locals relaxed a bit. They began to approach the new mysterious volcano, a crater with something that resembled boiling within it. People visited it like a new attraction. But then, just days later, the disaster struck again. At night, without warning, a new mountain went wild. A blast from the southern flank hurled scoria, chunks of jagged volcanic rock, into the air. This one was fatal for 24 people. The debris found afterwards was huge and coarse. For centuries after, the only signs of life from the Monte Nuovo were small fumaroles, jets of gas seeping from the earth. But then, even those faded away. Now it's just a lush green cone, a pretty sleeping giant. But the ground near Naples, Italy, is still alive. The Campiflagre sits quietly for now, but it might not be for long. It's showing signs it might be waking up again. This supervolcano looks like a hellish landscape, with its boiling mud pits, geysers, and steam vents. Romans and medieval Christians once believed it was a gateway to the underworld, and who can blame them? What's spooky is that recently scientists detected unusual activity under the surface. In 2012, Italian authorities raised the alert level on the volcano from green to yellow. meaning that it needs close monitoring. There are certain changes that usually happen before an eruption. The magma below starts releasing gases, which could weaken the rock above, eventually triggering a disaster. Unfortunately, no one can predict exactly when or if it will erupt. But if it does, the consequences could range from a minor inconvenience for locals to a global catastrophe. Its last tiny eruption happened in the 16th century, and it wasn't too bad. But if history repeats itself, like it was with Neanderthals, we're all cooked. An eruption like that could lead to global cooling, crop failures, and widespread famine. Right now, a group of scientists is trying to get a clearer picture of what's happening beneath the surface. The Flagrate Deep Drilling Project is working to drill a 10,000-foot borehole, hoping to check out the magma chamber up close. But at least for now, the supervolcano remains quiet, and let's hope it stays that way. When we think of active volcanoes, one region comes to mind: the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. 3/4 of Earth's volcanoes sit within this belt. Compare the area to Australia, which doesn't have any volcanic activity. The old continent of Europe is also calm, or at least we like to think so. Can you guess what the most active volcano in Europe is? If you thought of Mount Etna on the island of Sicily in Italy, you were right. The volcano has erupted about 200 times and has been far from sleeping in recent decades. The last time this happened was in August 2023. The highest mountain in the Mediterranean is 500 million years old. But in Iceland, there is a much younger volcano. It sprang into action on the 10th of July 2023. In the afternoon, 3 fissures appeared in the ground on a peninsula in the southwest of the island. This was at a base of a small mountain peak. Its name means Little Ram in the local language. The volcano spewed molten lava high into the air. There were also gas plumes in the area. But the scientific community wasn't surprised by the event. They already knew about the volcanic area that stretches between the cities of Reykjavik and Keflavik. Its name is hard to pronounce. Hey, I want to buy a vowel. It had already erupted during the previous 2 summers. This activist, the scientists who study earthquakes, recorded over 12,000 tremors. When the ground opened up in July, the fissures were over 1.5 miles long. The following morning, 2 of them closed. All the lava was now coming out of the last fissure. It grew into an elongated cone, the simplest shape of volcano we are all familiar with. The lava soon filled a large crater. It grew almost 100 feet tall during the first week, and it is still growing. On the night when the eruption started, lava spread out in all directions. Its cinders set ablaze the dry moss in the vicinity. Local authorities closed off the surrounding area. There were toxic gases from the volcanoes and smoke from the burning moss. Firefighters flocked to the area. After a week, they proclaimed the area safe. Visitors soon came to witness the birth of Europe's youngest volcano. This form of tourism is quite developed in Iceland. People come from all over the world to watch active volcanoes. The land of fire and ice is home to more than 130 volcanoes. Some 30 of them are active. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Is volcano tourism safe? In Iceland, it is. The country's authorities research and constantly monitor all of the hotspots. The island is dotted with several dozen seismic stations. These help researchers accurately predict future eruptions, and emergency services are accustomed to these sorts of events. They can quickly cordon off danger zones. This is what happened in 2010. A volcano in the south of the island, the name of which everyone struggled to pronounce, erupted. It spewed out a plume of steam and ash that was 7 miles high. This wasn't a fun time to be an air traveler. Winds carried the enormous plume southeast toward northern Europe. Many countries closed their airspace for several days for safety reasons. The volcano erupted in March, but the Earth was shaking from January the same year, so seismologists knew that an eruption was approaching. When it comes to the continent's youngest volcano, the tourist infrastructure is already there. Visitors can leave their cars at a designated parking lot. Then they go on a 5-hour-long trek. This leads to a viewing deck. Tourists are so close to the epicenter that they can feel the heat haze from the crater. The sight is the most impressive at nighttime. Safety is never a concern. Scientists regularly chart out hazard maps that outline the borders of lava fields. This way, visitors who stick by the rules are never in harm's way. More than a week after the eruption started, a section of the crater collapsed. Lava flowed downhill west of the volcano. This majestic smoldering hot river is slow-moving lava. Scientists categorize it as an AA type. The term is Hawaiian. It describes basaltic lava that has a rough and brittle surface. The flow is composed of broken lava blocks that are called clinkers. They fall off as the substance flows. This reveals red-hot areas. The cooler sections of lava are gray and black in color. When it moves forward, it produces a distinctive sound like shattering glass. Nearly a month after the eruption of the new volcano, we got aerial footage of an interesting phenomenon. A tornado formed directly over the lava flow. This occurs due to the high temperatures in the area. When the conditions are right, a column of heated air can easily turn into a mini tornado. Scientists observed a similar event happen during the 2018 eruption of Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. The lava fields of Europe's second-largest island tell the story of the creation of Iceland. It sits above the place where the North American and Eurasian plates meet each other. Tectonic plates are huge, rocky chunks of Earth's most outer layer. There are roughly 20 of them. They rest on a partially molten layer of rock. All the lava we see on the surface starts its journey here. You could say that these plates float on molten rock. Their boundaries are unstable, so when two plates grind past each other, they release tremendous amounts of energy. The formation of volcanoes is one result. These are places where the molten rock travels upward to the surface. Iceland began to form some 60 million years ago. The tectonic plates under the ocean drifted apart. Enough lava piled up on the surface to create solid ground. This ancient rock is under the waves today. As new lava reaches the surface and cools down, it pushes the old rock away from the center of the island. That's why the oldest parts of Iceland aren't 60, but only 16 million years old. The country's active lava fields are young in geological terms. Some of them are under 1,000 years old. Scientists consider the island a hot spot for volcanoes, pun intended. Nearly a third of the basaltic lava that reaches the Earth's surface in recorded history came from Icelandic eruptions. Fissure swarms, like the ones before the 2023 eruption, cover 30% of the Nordic country. For this reason, only a quarter of the island is inhabited. Norse Vikings were the first people to settle in Iceland at the beginning of the 10th century. Nature threw them a loud welcoming party. Just a few years after their arrival, they witnessed one of the greatest volcanic eruptions in history. Vikings came from a region without volcanoes, so they had no clue as to what was going on. Today, Icelanders are used to such events. This is good because their homeland is entering a new era of volcanic activity. Volcanologists suspect that recent events are an introduction to decades of more frequent eruptions. The peninsula that is home to Earth's youngest volcano is just 17 miles southwest of Iceland's capital city. It's been dormant for a long time. Present-day eruptions there are a reminder that the natural processes that created Iceland are still ongoing. Recently, scientists discovered that there's a historical link between volcanic eruptions in the north of Europe and glaciers. Our planet went through at least 5 major ice ages. These were exceptionally lengthy periods when the average temperature on Earth dropped. The result was the expansion of ice sheets across northern Europe and North America. The last ice age ended some 10,000 years ago. Researchers are still trying to fully understand how these glacial periods affected volcanic activity. They suspect that the sheer weight of all that ice disrupts the flow of magma underground. When glaciers retreat, the pressure is lifted. This makes it easier for lava to flow upward to the surface where it bursts. So, you notice anything weird? Recently, there have been alarming changes in the water levels in different parts of Yellowstone Lake. At the same moment, the water level can be rising on one side of the lake and falling on the other. Ooh, it looks as if the lake basin gets lifted by some underground forces. Can it be a sign of a looming disaster? Geysers, mud pots, and hot springs turn Yellowstone National Park into some extraterrestrial world. And all these wonders are fueled by a mighty supervolcano. Supervolcanoes produce super eruptions. When it happens, they launch more than 240 cubic miles of ash, molten rock, and hot gases up into the air. To make it easier to imagine, 4 super eruptions could fill the Grand Canyon to the brim. The Yellowstone giant was thought to be responsible for at least 3 enormous eruptions and countless smaller ones. In that region, the volcanic deposits are scattered over tens of thousands of miles. Scientists believe they had been created by many weak eruptions. But after doing more research, experts found out these deposits had been left by 2 previously unknown super eruptions. Those probably took place about 9 and 8.7 million years ago. This discovery means that the area around the Yellowstone volcano used to face a super eruption every 500,000 years. But over the last 3 million years, the hotspot has seen only 2 super eruptions. It makes scientists believe these catastrophic events are slowing down, or just maybe one is overdue. Anyway, if the Yellowstone supervolcano went off with as much power as it had 2.1 million years ago, it would spit out more than 588 cubic miles of boiling lava. That's more than 4,500 times the volume of Sydney Harbor. That's a lot of lava. Whether it's likely to happen or not is another question. There's no doubt that something is going on with the volcano. The water level changes in Yellowstone Lake mean the caldera is lifting under the surface. And the caldera is what's left over after a volcano erupts and then collapses. The Yellowstone caldera is not just going up, creating a dome-shaped uplift. It also moves up and down in a kind of breathing motion. It might be because the magma is seeping into the crust, or because this magma is heating up the Yellowstone hydrothermal system, making it expand and raise the crust. Yellowstone has the status of an active volcano. Its volcanic explosivity index is 8 out of 10. Such a high number means that if this volcano erupted, it would be an apocalyptic event. Right before the disaster, the ground around the national park would lift. Geothermal pools and geysers would heat up to boiling temperatures and get more acidic than usual. The magma would start to rise toward the surface. At some point, the rock roof of the magma chamber wouldn't be able to resist anymore, and the explosion would kick off. A massive column of lava and ash would shoot up to a height of over 16 miles. After that, the volcano would keep pumping ash for days on end. The mixture of lava, ash, and gas would be hotter than 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. It would travel through the area at a speed of 300 miles per hour, faster than a racing car. The air near the center of the eruption would heat up to 570 degrees Fahrenheit. One of the most dangerous consequences would be ash fallout. Volcanic ash can turn into glassy cement within seconds after being inhaled and getting in the lungs. People and animals would have problems with breathing. Okay, so that's an understatement, just so you know. Buildings would start to collapse under the weight of this dense substance. It would take just several days until a 10-foot layer of ash covered the territory of about 50 miles around the center of the eruption. After the ash got into the stratosphere, the temperatures all over the world would start to drop. If the eruption was rich in sulfur, an effective sunblocker, it would get so cold there would be no summer in the entire world for the next several years. The monsoon seasons would change. Agriculture would face serious problems. There would be issues with food supplies. Over the past 50 years, the Yellowstone caldera has risen almost 2 feet. It shouldn't alarm you, though. Experts are sure it's a natural behavior for Yellowstone. Periods of dome-shaped uplift are followed by the caldera lowering. Scientists think the supervolcano doesn't present any danger at the moment. For an eruption to happen, the magma inside has to be at least 50% molten. With Yellowstone, this number is just 5 to 15%. The probability of the eruption is 1 in 730,000. Safe to say, it's a long shot. Even better, a recent study made the researchers believe the hotspot might be in a state of decline right now, even despite all the breathing and dome-raising activity. Still, there have been tons of discussions about what people could do to prevent the disastrous supereruption from happening. And the most popular and seemingly effective idea was to cool the Yellowstone supervolcano down. Unfortunately, there's a catch. The volcano leaks out only 70% of the heat which comes from its magma-filled chambers, but the rest of the heat stays inside. As soon as it reaches a particular threshold, the volcano erupts. If it was possible to extract at least 35% of the Yellowstone volcano's heat, the eruption could be avoided. The cooler the magma is, the thicker and stickier it gets. It stops being so fluid and doesn't try to get out to the surface anymore. After considering these facts, NASA scientists came up with a plan. They suggested drilling a 6 miles deep well and pumping down cold, pressurized water. The temperature of the water that would get back to the surface would be approximately 662 degrees Fahrenheit. This way, the heat would be gradually extracted from the volcano. And if a geothermal plant was built on the site, it would generate plenty of electric power. It would be very simple to produce, and its price would be very alluring, about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. At first glance, it was an amazing idea. But sometime later, it started to receive a lot of criticism. Imagine drilling through the Earth's crust, getting deeper and deeper, and then wham bam, you hit a hypothermal pocket. Uh-oh, get ready for a catastrophe. This can release gases that are likely to cause a series of super powerful explosions. In the worst-case scenario, it may even trigger a full-scale volcanic eruption. Now, you already know about its catastrophic outcomes, from fountains of lava and avalanches of molten rocks to climate changes all over the globe. Yeah, not good. Or let's say you're drilling a well to deliver cold water to the volcano, and then you suddenly hit its magma chamber. In this case, instead of cooling the giant down, you'll make the top of the magma chamber much more fragile than it used to be. And the whole construction will be at risk of collapsing at any moment. And don't forget that your drilling may also release toxic gases. They often accumulate at the top of the reservoir with magma. Can it get any worse? Well, yes it can. The whole process would stretch for more than 16,000 years. This method is too risky to cool the volcano down as fast as people would probably want. And scientists aren't even 100% sure that when the cooling system construction is finished, the volcano will stay cold for at least another 100 years. And last but not least, the project of making the Yellowstone supervolcano a bit cooler would cost a mind-boggling $3.5 billion. A huge price for something that might not work out altogether. Oh, by the way, Yellowstone isn't the only volcano that has a lava dome that's lifting at the moment. Lava domes are created when magma gets to the surface and then gathers around the vent. Scientists have found one of those inside an underwater volcano in Japan. This dome is more than 2,000 feet high and more than 6 miles wide. Even though the Japanese supervolcano seems to be sleeping, experts don't let their guard down. A volcanic system can go from being calm and docile to teetering on the edge of an eruption in the blink of an eye. Another massive dome is growing in the central Andes, on top of the planet's largest active magma store. The Altiplano Puna Plateau, well there's a tongue twister, and where the dome was found, is the second highest plateau in the world, and the dome itself is more than half a mile tall. You might wonder how come experts have known nothing about this enormous uplift until recently. The answer is simple. It was hidden within the plateau. It's an arid region littered with volcanoes, and it stretches for thousands of miles. Yep, another case of